What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of The Meaning of Podcast. I am Ace.
This is RB3.
And this is the podcast where we get into the deeper meaning of your favorite directors and all their films, for the most part, maybe most of their films. Either way, guys, this week we're doing probably the most famous director working in Hollywood today. It's debatable, but I would consider it, considering he is a very popular director and everyone always goes out to see his movies. If you're a film fan, you know who he is. His name is Quentin Tarantino. We're going to go through his movies, but I also want to talk about a little bit of a broader picture when it comes to Tarantino, especially now in 2018 when you guys are watching this video. But last week, we did Alejandro González Iñárritu, which got us 6 comments on YouTube. And we're going to pick out 2 of those and read them out loud.
Great 6 comments, though.
Great 6 comments, man. Neil Varma says Babel is underrated. I
agree.
Gunslinger 199 says Birdman is a masterpiece. The Revenant is a better shot version of the Bear Grylls show. Yikes. That's kind of what you said last week, though. You said it's just a really well shot nature movie.
Yeah, that's good. It's a good cinematography, you know? Not gonna crap on it, but I just don't.
Throwing shade. RB3 throwing shade already. Lou Bloom says, hey, shout out to Lou Bloom, man. We haven't seen him in a minute. Says, this will be good. Can't wait to hear your probably different opinions on him. I loathe Iñárritu, but that's maybe because I haven't watched any of his movies in a temple. Interesting.
In a temple?
Hey, man, I watch movies in a temple, too.
In a temple?
Yeah, I think he means, like... You know what he means, right?
Please explain that to me.
This is what in a temple means, RB3. Come on. What are the kids learning these days? No, I think he means like in a settled environment, maybe.
Okay.
Where it's not.
Oh, in the theater or something. Oh, okay.
Or like in a settled environment where he can just watch it and no distractions.
Oh, okay. I mean, I don't know. I guess
perhaps he means like in a temple in a sense of like without the hype, without any noise outside of it, without people saying, oh, it's so amazing. Like maybe that's what he means.
Yeah. I just meant like a literal church.
Watch him answer next week. He's like, no, bro, I meant in my temple. It's right outside my house. I go there every Sunday.
Watch all my movies there. Yeah, sorry, Lou Bloom. I'm smart, but I'm not that smart. Yeah. It's still funny though. That shit cracked me up.
Raul Alejandro Mendoza says, listen to this on podcast.
Good job on the pronunciation, by the way.
Yeah. Listen to this on podcast, and I really just want to say thank you for covering his work. Beautiful is my favorite movie of all time, and it never fails to leave me in tears. Iñárritu is truly one of the best right now, and it sucks that his VR project, Carne y Arena, isn't available to purchase because it's his most ambitious work in terms of technicality with VR technology. That's the one I was talking about last week that I wanted to do. Keep up the awesome work. Thank you for this episode. I've been looking forward to it since y'all started this podcast. Thank you, Raul.
Thank you. Raul.
Yeah.
You know, Raul, thank you for saying that, because we have been going out of our way to do different directors of color.
We never know. Every time we pick one, and it's always just like it's my fault. We should definitely be way more organized. But every time we pick one, I'm like, who should we do? But yeah, we're definitely picking ones that we're more interested in, and we're not necessarily thinking of people more interested in, which is obviously not a good thing to do. But that's why this week we're making up for it.
Hey, man, well, I think
by picking a very popular director.
Well, I think we have a pretty great catalog of directors that we've picked.
I think so too, man.
Yeah, I think in the legacy play, 41 episodes in, I mean, it's episode 42. We're gonna Tarantino.
I was gonna talk to you about it off camera, but I might as well do it now. I kind of want to get into maybe getting another mic and getting in guests here.
Oh man, yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
I think it'd be fun.
Get Cody Hall in here.
Cody Hall. I mean, he gave you a shout out on Twitter and said that you're a celebrity and he wants to be on your podcast.
Yeah, you gotta come on this one.
And I think he means the mean.
yeah. I mean,
did he mean me too? No, I'm kidding.
Me too.
But yeah, I feel like we should start getting guests, and I think it'll be the next chapter in the Meaning of Podcast.
Yeah,
and it would be fun because then they could kind of pick their director they want to talk about.
Yeah, we could have JT in here to talk about Stallone or something, you know. I don't know.
Sure. I was gonna say, what's JT's favorite director? Oh,
Well, I think he loves John Woo. Like, we talking about John Woo.
That's
like,
right. Yeah.
I think he's talked multiple times about that's one of his favorite.
Either way, I think it'd be a lot of fun. Even friends of yours, because I'm sure you have a lot of film school friends.
Yeah.
Or even friends of mine, because I know a lot of people who used to work with me in the industry. Not famous people, but just people who have knowledge on film, have thoughts on different directors. So I think it'd be a lot of fun to do that. So
Right.
you never know, guys. Maybe that's the next chapter. Maybe that's what's going to get people in to start actually watching and listening to these podcasts. But today's not that day, because today we're doing Quentin Tarantino.
QT.
And right off the bat, you're wearing the Pulp Fiction shirt, and I want to say I know this because I think you are a much bigger fan of Quentin Tarantino than I am.
Oh, really?
But I think it's safe to say you're a fan, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm like a diehard, you know.
Okay,
like,
you're a diehard already.
Yeah,
That's way more than me.
Yeah. Tarantino.
And I'm interested to dive into his films, of course, because his films always have something to say, and that's the point of this podcast. But out of all the directors we've talked about, I really do feel like this director, Quentin Tarantino, is probably the biggest, not in terms of necessarily popularity, but in terms of his persona, his brand, his personality, his staple in Hollywood in general. I think he is, out of everyone we've done, I really do feel that way. I feel like, maybe except for Spielberg, but I think like he is the one who's very much like, you watch his films, but you also watch what he has to say in interviews and stuff, because he's always got something to say, and he's got an enormous, huge personality to the point that it's like it's hard to ignore every time. I don't know if you agree with that, but I feel like, especially I watched Full Tilt Boogie. Have you seen that?
I have not. No.
It's the documentary of From Dusk Till Dawn.
Oh, okay.
And you definitely get to see, because Tarantino's one of the stars of that movie. And he's also the writer of From Dusk Till Dawn. He wrote that screenplay.
Right.
Obviously, it's directed by Robert Rodriguez, and it's starring George Clooney as well. But at the same time, it's a behind-the-scenes documentary, so you get to see a lot of his personality. And it's a 90s movie, so it's very much like of the time. And it's very interesting to see, like, Quentin Tarantino, because you're like, oh no, this guy's crazy. Like, you watch him in interviews and stuff, and you're like, oh, this guy's bananas. I mean, he's a genius, obviously, but at the same time, you can like, all right, he's slightly not quite has his feet on the ground. He's slightly floating above the ground. He's not quite like in the clouds as far as where his head is, but he's like floating above the ground as far as like who he is and his personality and how he considers himself, because he's definitely a enormous personality.
He has a big ego, I think, and I mean, listen, for some people that's justifiable, you know.
Absolutely, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean,
sure.
When you really think about it, Tarantino is probably one of the, if you were to put together a Mount Rushmore of directors, he might be one of the only ones from like this generation who could have a serious conversation about it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
As much as we love people like PTA or like,
would you even consider him part of this generation?
I mean, because I feel like
he comes from, and this is my opinion, I feel like he comes from a different time, and we'll talk about that later on, but I feel like he's not quite this generation, but he's not quite the older generation either. He's somewhere like this weird middle of the 90s hyper crazy, hyper violent, hyper who gives a shit type of way of doing filmmaking. It's a very much like a old school indie type filmmaking, where it's like, we're doing it for love and we don't care, and we're just going to keep doing it and keep shooting, even if it's like way over time and you're not paying enough for these for your crew members. But I don't know, this is my opinion.
Well, I mean, I think for me at least, I think Tarantino's the one who kicked us off into this generation. Okay. At least like, and I say that in the sense that when Reservoir Dogs premiered at Sundance in 1992, excuse me, that movie, before that, Sundance was kind of whatever, you know what I mean? Only big movie to play at Sundance before Reservoir Dogs was Sex, Lies, and Videotapes, which was Steven Soderbergh in 1989. But I think Reservoir Dogs really put that on the map, and I think it really hyperventilated the independent scene, which was around in like the late 60s, early 70s. But then, of course, filmmaking started to become more conglomerized, but he kind of kicked down the door for allowing more opportunities to kind of make it. So I think him and Kevin Smith with with Quentin Tarantino with Reservoir Dogs and Kevin Smith with Clerks, those are kind of the movies that show people like, oh, anybody can make a movie, essentially. Sure. And I think that impact was just felt throughout Hollywood and just continues to spread, throughout this day.
Let's talk about it. What is your relationship with Reservoir Dogs?
Reservoir Dogs?
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't the first Tarantino movie I saw, but to me, it's one of his best, by far one of his best. Maybe not by far, but is probably up there in the top 3 Tarantino movies for me. And I mean, that's impressive for somebody to do their first film and have their first film be so fully realized that many people still consider it one of their tops. And, and honestly, like when you really think about it, for a debut film for somebody's first film, you don't really see many debuts as heavy as something like Reservoir Dogs, as something is so critically acclaimed and highly regarded and generationally impactful. Really maybe Citizen Kane is the only other one, Orson Welles' first movie. And of course, there's later Tarantino movies that are better, but this is the one that kicks him off initially, and you're just like, wow, this is somebody who's gonna. So in terms of debut films, it's probably one of the best debuts of all time.
I was gonna say that. I mean, it's definitely. We always talk about like what movie put the director on the map. Usually, it's like the third movie they do. Mm-hmm. As far as like popularity, as far as everyone knowing the name, as far as everyone going out to watch their next movie. Mm. But in a rare occasion, we have something like a Tarantino where his debut film made him a star. Like just like that. He's already like a popular director. He's famous now because of Reservoir Dogs. Versus other directors we talk about when their debut film was really good and really small and got more studios into them. But this one got audiences into the next Tarantino movie that we're going to talk about, obviously. But what do you feel like is the deciding factor that made Reservoir Dogs such a classic right off the bat? Is it is it the story, the dialogue, the characters? Is it a combination of all of it?
Yeah.
What do you feel it is?
I mean, I think it's a combination of all of it. I mean, it was just something new. You know what I mean? And when you really watch that movie in the context of what was coming out during that time, the 80s, like all these Spielberg kind of movies, coming of age movies were popular and all that kind of stuff. It was something so like radically different.
The Amblin type movies?
Yeah, the Amblin type movies still happen in the 80s. But there's still like more adult movies happening too, But this was something, like you said, it was violent, it was edgy, but it was super low budget. And, they kind of this is one of the first movies that I can think off the bat when I think of movies that are set in like a singular location primarily, because the movie is pretty much all set in the warehouse except for the scenes that go outside the warehouse. But it had that idea, and it also had the non-linear storytelling that was kind of new at the time. Not new, but we haven't seen a lot in independent film at that time. So all of that just combined, it was just different. It was fresh, and I think it really helped that. There was just this overall coolness to it, and it was a mixture of genres that a lot of people hadn't seen before. It was the crime movie mixed with the buddy. It was the crime movie mixed with the buddy comedy mixed with all these different the old gangster movies. All of these different subgenres just all kind of coalescing and making something really satisfying to people.
Yeah, I mean, Tarantino is obsessed with old movies. He's obsessed with like old Hollywood, and he's obsessed with like different types of genres within the old types of movies. That like obviously we're going to talk about other movies in the future where he literally does story structure in a way that's so throwback to the point that no one even remembers that. But yeah, he always tries different things, but it's always something that it's inspired for in the past, usually. I don't know if you agree with that. But he usually like dives into the past and brings it to the future kind of thing. Like it's whether it's a style of filmmaking, whether it's the way he tells his story, like whatever it may be, whether it's like the acting, even that is like very specific to the type of movie that you're watching in a Tarantino film. Because in some movies, it's super over the top acting, and in other movies, it's much more quiet. And there's moments of over the topness, but it's usually held in a much more serious way, instead of like a hyper reality kind of way. But other movies are much more grounded.
Then the hyper reality, I think that adds to it too, because you know, when you look at something like Reservoir Dogs, a lot of people say it's kind of the ripoff of the Hong Kong movie City on Fire, right? Which is another gangster movie, also has a similar kind of premise, you know, the robbery gone wrong and all that kind of stuff. And you look at that and you see the influence from Hong Kong cinema, which is very hyperactive, you know, overexpressive, you know, and he kind of adopts that and puts that into this movie where he heightens the characters up to like a certain extent. So I think that's definitely present there.
And one thing that Tarantino's known for is reusing his cast, his actors over and over again. Obviously, the first one is Harvey Keitel.
Yeah, Harvey Keitel, yeah.
Yeah, I'm probably mispronouncing his name, sorry. And, I mean, obviously, this movie is stacked with names that you see all the time.
Tim Roth. I'm sorry, Tom. Jesus, man, I'm really messing up his name here. Sorry, Tim Roth, if you're watching this.
Tomb Ruthinator? It's just like you're making up names at this point.
Michael Masson.
And obviously the one to me that stands out quite a bit is Steve Buscemi. But as far as like working with the cast, obviously everyone gives a great performance, but who do you feel like is the standout in this movie? Oh man,
I just always love Steve Buscemi, like,
right?
In anything, man. Like he just has that like screamish quality that's like really hilarious, but also very relatable.
Yeah.
And I think he pulls that perfectly here. I love Keitel in this movie too, because
I was gonna say that guy is like
he's acting his ass off.
He's an actor. Yeah. He's like a kind of guy where he like gets in the mode and stuff. Like even watching the behind the scenes of From Dusk Till Dawn, they interviewed him because he's in like one scene in the beginning, I think, and he was just talking about like why he got into acting and why he does what he does, and he's just so into it to the point that I'm like, just chill, man, chill. Yeah, bro, he's into acting. Like he takes it very seriously, and you can see that in this movie too.
Right. No, absolutely. And the way his character kind of has to navigate the aggression, the anger that comes from being the de facto leader of this group, while also like the sadness and trying to take care of like a dying Tim Roth character is also like he goes a lot of different levels that I feel like a lot of characters in this movie play into one particular type and they roll with that really well, but his character I feel like has the most of everybody in it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and for one thing too, I want to talk about two different things before we move on. The first thing is I personally feel like even if it's a movie that's not as popular, a Tarantino movie, he always kind of has something that he's telling you and you can clearly see it. What do you feel like is the overlying factor that keeps coming up in this movie that you can tell that this was the point of this movie?
Yeah, I mean...
Specifically with the ending too, because Tarantino's endings are always
yeah.
There's always something there to the endings. Because personally, when I watch Tarantino movies, I'm like, how is this gonna end? I'm trying to figure it out. But what do you feel that is for Reservoir Dogs?
I mean, for me, it's just like the idea of deception and not trusting even your closest, comrades, and to me, I really look at it as almost like a self-reflexive kind of thing too. And at least self-reflective in terms of filmmaking, because the whole point of filmmaking is to deceive the audience for as long as possible until you reveal some information that going to throw them off. With this movie, it's always interesting because the audience always finds out things before the characters do. And I think that's a big part of what Tarantino's filmmaking is. Even when you look on a micro level of his dialogue, a lot of times, what he says in his dialogue, why his dialogue comes off as so repetitive is because a lot of times he's building anticipation within the dialogue. Like a lot of times, with this movie, for example, it's like you haven't, when characters say stuff like you haven't met so and so or this and this, like that's adding anticipation to what's going to come next. And I think Tarantino is really good at building that anticipation until it builds off into something really great. So I mean, that's where I feel like Reservoir Dogs does that really well, is that he takes the nonlinear structure to his advantage and does that, and also puts a perspective from the actor's perspective of that too, right? Like with the Tim Roth character, when he's about to go undercover and he's like kind of rehearsing to himself like an actor would, you know what I mean? Like kind of going over lines and like kind of keep practicing. But I feel like overall it's almost like a self-reflective, like, kind of look onto the making of movies.
Sure.
Within
like a
this,
meta.
Yeah, meta. Yeah, maybe that's just my meta analysis of it, but I mean that's just something that I've always taken away from that too. So
yeah, and obviously you got into it a little bit, but I feel like that's kind of, besides his dialogue, that's kind of what Tarantino is known for, besides the violence too, is building tension.
Right.
I feel like he's a master at building tension, and he does that in pretty much every single one of his movies, including his next one, RB3. That's my transition. Pulp Fiction, which you're wearing a shirt of right now.
Yeah, Pulp Fiction.
Now, this movie also plays with time. This movie plays with different characters and different stories, which is something we've seen a lot. we just talked about it last week with Babel. And with different types of Alejandro movies. And Tarantino does it very much so to everyone's surprise in this movie, which is Pulp Fiction, which is another one that I don't know if it premiered at Sundance. I might be wrong.
I know for sure when the Palme d'Or at Cannes.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
It won the Palme d'Or. Shout out to France winning the World Cup.
Hey,
which my French pronunciation of things is usually just going, and it works every time, man.
Palme d'Or.
Palme d'Or. But yeah, so this movie right off the bat was critically acclaimed and popular, and a lot of people wanted it to win the Oscar, but I don't think it did, right?
No, that was the same year as Forrest Gump. So
That's
Forrest
right.
Gump won the Oscar.
That's right.
Yeah, 1994 was also the year that Shawshank Redemption came out too. That was also nominated for Best Picture that year.
Dang, dude.
Yeah.
That's a crazy year.
It's a crazy year, man.
Yeah.
I don't know what's happened in 1994. Everybody was just off on juice, like making great movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like, well, that's the 90s for you too.
Yeah.
Like the 90s were crazy, bro. Like I'm telling you, watching that documentary, I'll talk about it a little bit more, but it's so funny how like times have changed.
Yeah.
Things were different back then. But when it comes to this movie, a lot of people still say it's his best movie. I don't know if would you agree with that?
To me it is.
Okay.
And to me, it's probably the most thoughtful out of all of his movies in the sense that it really gives you a lot of moments of hesitation, of pause between the suspense and the violence and the killing. And I think it all builds to that moment towards the end where Samuel L. Jackson character, what's his name, Jules and Vincent? Yeah, Jules and Vincent. Vincent's John Travolta.
Yeah.
To me, when he gives that whole monologue at the end, that kind of encompasses the entire theme of this movie. Like, is it better to just kill needlessly, or is it better to be thoughtful and rational and work within your own moral parameters and stuff like that? So I feel like this movie honed in on something really thoughtful and really meditative about, ironically about the notion of killing and being a gangster and violence and all that stuff. But I don't know, that to me is, and it shows when characters do bad things, they're going to have a lot of bad consequences put upon them for their actions, like we see Vincent, John Travolta, doing all these random killings, and not random, but like he accidentally shoots the guy in the back of the car, you know what I mean? Like, and then, but then he ultimately ends up paying a certain price for it too. And so that the people who, and so does Bruce Willis. He's not a classy character, but he ends up paying some sort of price, but he ultimately ends up getting some redemption too. So I feel like the arc of this movie, kind of the meditation and the redemption aspect of it, and the people who don't get redeemed having to face some sort of consequences for that as well, it's all really fascinating to me.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because you can kind of pick and choose what your favorite storyline in this movie is. I mean, everyone kind of just goes with Samuel L. Jackson's and John Travolta's storyline because that's the one that stands out the most, I mean, personally to me. And it's also because this is Quentin Tarantino working with Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
Something that we see all the time now. But I don't know. Do you feel like this movie, I don't want to say typecast, but typecasted Samuel L. Jackson kind of?
It gave him, I think, the personality that we recognize him for now.
Sure, because he's in Goodfellas too, but he's in it for like
5 minutes.
5 minutes or something.
Yeah, barely. And he's in other things too, of course, like Jurassic Park also came out in 94. But like, or 93. Jurassic Park came out in 93.
93.
Yeah.
But this, I feel like this one
was the one.
Like that's Samuel L. Jackson doing Samuel L. Jackson.
This was the motherfucking.
That's what I'm saying.
Samuel L. Jackson that
now
came from this.
When you see Samuel Jackson, you expect that. And so you feel like it typecasted him a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely set a track. But I mean, that's the role that Sam Jackson's like always been perfect at playing. Like, I'm never not gonna.
I was gonna say Sam Jackson works his ass off, bro.
Yeah.
He's always on set shooting something.
Yeah, he's always on set, and he's always, and I don't think I've really seen, I mean, there's plenty of bad Samuel L. Jackson movies, but I haven't seen him do bad in any of them. So
you're saying like his performances?
His performances aren't usually never bad in them. So I just feel like that, I mean, and, you know, salute to Quentin for pulling that out of him. I know originally Samuel L. Jackson had auditioned for Reservoir Dogs, but didn't get the part, but Quentin, called him back for something like this. And as we see from that point on, Samuel Jackson is in almost every one of his movies.
I think so. Yeah, you're right. Well,
I don't know about that.
Almost every one.
Yeah, I don't think that.
Almost every one of these movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, to me, I think it's funny at this point because he's known for kind of either giving careers to different actors or reviving careers for different actors,
especially for Travolta.
Travolta is another one in this movie that I feel like Tarantino kind of revived his career in a way that kind of proves that he's a good actor. Something that people were questioning back in the day, and obviously as well, the biggest one to me is
Uma Thurman.
Uma Thurman.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I almost forgot her name.
Is Mia Wallace.
Yes, it's Mia Wallace. But for me, it's that kind of kickstarted the relationship that he had with Uma Thurman. With obviously right now in retrospect, it's kind of funny thinking about it. The kind of stuff that Quentin was known for on set. Yeah. But for anyone who doesn't know, Quentin on set is a maniac. Like he's crazy. And he's known for being extremely, I don't want to say quick-tempered, but quick-tempered. And kind of just sporadic and just going crazy and doing his own thing.
He's going to tell you how he feels, I feel like. At least based on the stories that you can recollect from a lot of actors talking about him. I mean, we're going to talk about Django later, but there's an amazing story like
Django and Jamie Foxx. I heard this story. That interview, it's great. It's great. I forget what it was. I don't know if it was Jimmy Kimmel or... It
was like Howard Stern or something like that.
Howard Stern, something. Yeah. But, you're right. It was Howard Stern.
Yeah. He was talking about how Tarantino was like demanding him to like play a slave and not be like, hey, trying to make it too cool. Yeah. Which is funny because... Like, it's weird that a white director is, like, yelling at this black dude about how
we're going to talk about that later, bro. I have it in my notes right here next to me.
Notes, all right.
I have some notes. Not many notes, but I have a few notes. And that's one of my notes. We'll talk about that later, obviously. But, yeah, for me, this movie shows, and obviously Tim Roth as well. And then right off the bat, I feel like the thing that really puts this movie over the edge, over the top, as a classic is what Tarantino is always known for nowadays, the dialogue. The dialogue is crazy in this movie. It moves at a pace that's insane. And everyone kind of knows, it's almost kind of poetic in a way, how crazy the dialogue is. And obviously hyper-realistic type dialogue that Tarantino is known for. But it's dialogue that pulls you in different moments of the story. And it's almost the dialogue that's the running thread between every single character in this movie. Because even though they're all separate... it's the one thing that they all kind of have in common. I don't know if you agree with that, but I feel like it stands out quite a bit. And it's funny because rewatching Tarantino movies over the week, which is what I did, I notice how he structures dialogue quite a bit. Like I started to catch on how he does it. And the most famous one is Samuel L. Jackson's scene in the apartment of the guy. Yeah. When he quotes the Bible to him. That's the perfect example.
Was it Ezekiel 7:16 or something like that?
You would know more than I don't know.
Yeah.
but
by the way, it's not a real Bible verse.
There you go.
Yeah.
RB3, the theologian.
There we go, man.
But it's one of those things where it's like it became famous. Like he became famous for his dialogue. And I don't know what's your moment that stands out too, as far as
for me it's the hamburger, and for me it's always. To me, what I always take away from it was all the scenes with Mia and John Travolta with Vincent. All those scenes they have together, like "Don't Be a Square," I mean, there's some like really funny like visual cues that he puts in with the dialogue that are just like astonishing to me. Like, there's also something else in the diner scene that I mentioned, like something about other Marilyn Monroe's, but it was like right when somebody else had like walked in. It was he does like a lot of very funny visual tricks that are like very subtle, which I think is just he's known as being a perfectionist, and he's very meticulous, and sometimes there's continuity errors, of course, of all great movies, but you know, for him, is very meticulous in how the actors speak and how the actors present his dialogue, and also how his dialogue is presented visually. So.
Sure, like mannerisms and stuff like that. Yeah, he's known for controlling mannerisms.
Right. And what happens in the background and the foreground. So a lot of stuff to me. But yeah, the dialogue in that, like with the $5 milkshake, like, you really gonna buy $5? All that conversation to me is just so funny and like hilarious, but also gives you a lot of insight onto who both of them are. Like, Mia's very talkative and very adventurous and wants to be the cool, you know, party chick, while Vincent's very much like, oh, let me just do the job and like get out of here, you know.
Sure. That's another thing that you kind of reminded me of is Quentin is known for his contrast, shooting different scenes and putting them together with something that contrasts with the tone, specifically with music, and specifically with cutscenes to other scenes that are very different in tone. Right. Specifically in this movie with when John Travolta is freaking out over Mia and he's driving, and then it cuts to the other homie, and he's just eating cereal super slow and chill. Like that's kind of the stuff he's known for, with contracting different tones of the movie. And he does that quite a bit with music nowadays in his current films, where he puts like a horrifying scene and he puts like super music you don't suspect, like happy, fun music. Singing about happiness, and it's something horrible going on.
Even in his older films, like even in Reservoir Dogs, like a lot of people now can't think of like Stuck in the Middle with You without also thinking of somebody getting their ear cut off. You know, like, same thing here. I feel like there's a lot of iconic mixture, like the I don't know the name of that song. I don't know most old music people, just so you guys know. But like all of the traditional, all of what we know from this soundtrack is through the prism of this movie for a large part of the culture, at least. So super fascinating how he's able to capture the music and use that to antagonize what's happening on screen on a certain kind of way.
And it's an actual art form for people who don't consider that to be. It's hard to do that, to do it well, obviously, because there's a ton of directors that do that, but I feel like doing it well is difficult to do. Contrasting scenes with tone and not pulling your audience out of the movie, because it can pull you out of a movie very quickly, but actually sucking your audience more into the movie and getting them more involved and almost kind of realizing how they're supposed to feel, because that's what music does in movies. It's telling you how to feel, technically. So if you have a scene that's supposed to be very emotional, but there's like dun 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 dun, you're not gonna feel it, right? That's my criticism of Jurassic World that I told you about, Fallen Kingdom, was that they literally had scenes that were like intense, and they had like dun 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 dun, and I was just like, why? Why are you making dumb, silly music? You're telling me to feel this way that it's dumb and silly, instead of me being, you know, involved with Chris Pratt running away from lava, which would kill him instantly. But that's kind of the point I'm saying, is that it's difficult to do that transition between music and scene and tone, which in my opinion is the most important thing in a movie, is tone, because it's telling you how to feel for these characters, or whether or not to feel for these characters. I don't know if you have any. You're like, move on. Let's move on.
No, Pulp Fiction, excellent movie, and like we said, there's also a lot of themes of, I guess there's also a lot of themes of drug addiction too, right?
Sure.
Like we see
with Mia
and with Vincent. I mean, they're both super hooked on heroin, which just goes to show how idiotic heroin can make people act. So don't do heroin, kids.
Please don't do heroin. Yeah. I had a please in front of that. Please don't do.
So yeah, I don't know. This movie's awesome.
Yeah, and obviously there's so many classic moments in the movie, like the dancing scene we didn't talk about, but it's literally a classic moment in the movie now. And obviously Bruce Willis is also someone who's, I think he was already pretty popular.
Yeah, he already had Die Hard and all that stuff. Yeah. But I also love the idea of like I love how he takes all of these generic movie tropes like the bored wife, the boxer who has the paid off boxer who has to take a dive for the fight, you know, these old school gangsters. He kind of takes all these old like 1940s, 50s, 60s movie archetypes and then expands them in like the most postmodernist way and like reevaluates like what those characters will be doing in their personal lives, you know.
Sure.
How these fucking super stern gangsters will be talking about
like these guys are like hitman and they're in their real clothes they're like silly goofy dad looking guys.
right
it looks like a dad.
Right They're talking about cheeseburgers and foot massages, you know what I mean? Like, hey, it's very
Tarantino's fetish.
Oh yeah, fetish, yeah. Ooh.
We'll get into that later, but we're moving on to his next film, which is Jackie Brown. Now this is RB3's favorite movie of all time. No, I'm kidding.
I do really enjoy this movie.
Yeah, I was going to say,
super underrated.
I mean, there's a different conversation when it comes to Django, but when it comes to Tarantino, and obviously Pam Grier, who's, you know,
an actress, living legend,
yeah. Right? And Samuel Jackson is too. But when it comes to putting African American actors in the forefront, putting them as almost leads in the movie, putting them in a position of power, is almost something that Tarantino is known for now, right? I don't know if you would agree with that.
Yeah,
am I taking it too far?
No. I mean, I think a lot of the black community really appreciates what Tarantino does.
Okay.
Some people obviously take some objection to the word that rhymes with Tigger. But
that's my next word. That's my next thought is the fact that it's literally in my notes. His relationship with the N-word.
Yeah.
That is definitely a huge criticism of him. The fact that he's known for, being very flexible with that word on his own tongue and not on an actor's tongue.
Yeah. Because
Pulp
Fiction, he was saying it.
What do you think of that?
What I think, listen, like,
it gets even more crazy with Django Unchained, right?
Django.
But I'm gonna start it now with Jackie Brown. Even though I should have started it later in this conversation. I have different points going on in different films.
Yeah.
But the biggest one for me is one of the criticisms of Tarantino is his liberty to just say the N-word whenever he feels like it, because he feels like you just said, the African American community has sort of embraced him.
Yeah.
But hasn't embraced him to the point that he can just say that word.
Yeah. And listen,
I don't know.
Listen, to be fair, like, he's good about not saying it in interviews. You know what I mean? He'll not say it in interviews.
He won't say it where people can record him and then publicize it.
Right. Now, he'll just say it in his movies, you know, so he can just be like, hey, it's a
set.
movie, it's art. You know what I mean?
On set.
And I sure hope he's not calling like Pam Grier the N-word. Oh my God, I can imagine that. But I think he has a lot of favor in the black community because he gives parts to a lot of black actors, and he surprisingly gives a lot of perspective to African American characters that a lot of directors don't even think about. Particularly with this movie with Jackie Brown. This is a movie that is based on the Elmore. Elmore is based on the book that originally the lead character is not black. That was the change that Tarantino made while writing the adaptation for the story. And this is Tarantino's only adaptation, by the way. His only adaptation. And
yes, Kill Bill, wasn't it based on a comic or
I don't think it was based on anything.
I forget what it's based on.
It took a lot from a lot of different things, though. And we're going to talk about that. I have an entire essay written on my phone about how much it takes from other things.
Got it.
But this movie definitely but Jackie Brown's is only like true official like adaptation.
Sure.
You know, and it applies in that sense because this is the only movie where characters aren't necessarily talking in the Tarantino as dialogue. Is more focused on the characters and particularly with the character of Jackie Brown, how being a 44-year-old black woman is not the most favorable conditions and how that would lead to somebody like Jackie doing the crimes that she's doing because she's kind of out of options, So yeah, to me it's really fascinating that for one, that perspective wasn't even in the original source material, but for two, it's fleshed out as much as it was because Jackie Brown's the most recent movie of his filmography that I saw that I've seen in preparation for this.
That you rewatched.
Yeah, and that was a very prominent position in that movie. So
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this movie is another. It doesn't. When people say, "What's your favorite Tarantino movie?" I don't feel like people even, like you just said before, like a Tarantino movie. You think of Pulp Fiction, you think of Inglorious Basterds, you think of Django, you think of this crazy, slightly over the top, super quick dialogue. A lot of people don't even consider this movie.
Brown, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think of that? Because I feel like this movie wasn't as, super well received as other of his films.
I mean, this is definitely the most un-Tarantino movie he's probably made. When you swing that far to the pendulum, a lot of people, I guess, taken off by it. I think it's also the fact that it directly followed Pulp Fiction, so people were expecting, follow-up to Pulp Fiction, what is it going to be? And it was something that was different. It wasn't all of the snappy dialogue. There's still definitely a snappy dialogue there. But these characters are more just people who all are very, very different, speak very, very differently, and don't, and it's so much more focused on like place and location and theme and all this different stuff. I mean, particularly with location, I think I'm attached to this movie partially because it takes place in a lot of the areas that I grew up in: Compton, Carson, Hawthorne. The Delamo Mall is featured prominently, which is the mall I went to like all the time when I was a kid, in Torrance. So these are all locations I'm very familiar with. South Los Angeles.
I feel like I'm going to comment on that, and I kind of want to dive in deeper on that. It's so powerful, and it's hard to watch a movie without taking that in. Watching a movie that takes place wherever you grew up, or takes place somewhere intimately. I feel like that can literally affect your thoughts and your opinions on the movie. That happened to me. I've talked about it a lot, but on Sicario, and part 2 as well, Day of the Soldado. It's every town they go to, I'm like, I grew up here. But it's one of those things that it affects my thoughts on the movie. It really did. Like, I was talking to my mom about it. I'm like, it's hard because that's my hometown, right? But yeah, you feel that same way with this movie, where it's like you kind of take your perceived notions and your childhood memories or whatever memories that you have, and you kind of take it into this movie. I don't know if you would agree with that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, and I think that the movie does a great job of highlighting all those different areas that it touches on. But I think this movie, more than anything, is not focused on the dialogue. It's more focused on the people and the characters, and seeing all of these different people for who they are, and kind of I'm peeling the onion for a lot of these people, because for at least like Robert De Niro's character, like, you don't know anything about him until like you're very deep into the movie, and you're just slowly realizing more and more of how much of a sociopath this guy is, or psychopath this guy is. Meanwhile, you grow more empathetic with somebody who, like, with the Max Cherry character played by Robert Foster, as you learn more and more about him. So it's just all, and again, more and more information about Samuel Jackson. I mean, for his character at least, you get to know who he is almost immediately when he has that scene with Beaumont, and he kills the Chris Tucker character Beaumont, and from that point on, you just kind of know, like, oh, this guy's a fucking piece of shit. But then, like, you end up like liking him more and more, but then he also does some more fucked up shit. So it's just like, damn, it's tough, man. Like, it's tough to really like you, but you're really likable. You know what I mean? I feel like this movie operates on a lot of different character levels that a lot of Tarantino movies don't really operate on. So,
but that's also on the actor itself. I feel that personally. What does the actor bring to the screen? Sometimes it's difficult to dislike a character because of the association with the performance that they're giving, and you start to be like, he's super messed up, but he's kind of cool. Yeah. Because that happens a lot in movies, and that obviously is going to happen with Samuel Jackson, who's a
mega star, super
crazy, well-known actor, and a really good actor too. But let's talk about Pam Grier, because I feel like she's probably the one that, in my opinion, that stands out the most, and her character, and the way that Tarantino gives you not only her current story, but her backstory and kind of where she's coming from. What do you feel like on a performance level, but also on a character level, that the character of Pam Grier, I forget her name in the movie,
Jackie Brown.
That's right. Sorry. But this movie's called Jackie Brown because of what she gives, right? So, what do you feel her opinion on that?
Well, no, I think it's fantastic that the Tarantino casted Pam Grier. She's a very big blaxploitation actress back in that time, starting in movies like Coffee and all these amazing like blaxploitation films back then. And she was a big part of that movement. So seeing that Tarantino not lose, but he takes a lot of influence from blaxploitation in this movie in particular.
He does it in quite a few of his movies too, though.
Yeah. I mean, there's some of that in Pulp Fiction. There's a lot of that here. And when we talk about, Django, that's an all blaxploitation movie.
And I know it's not technically his movie, but he wrote From Dusk Till Dawn.
Oh, right.
I forget the character's name in that movie, but
right.
You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That guy's straight out of his blaxploitation movie.
Yeah.
Like literally straight out of it. I think that's where he got him.
Right. And I mean, you look at the other movies Tarantino's written too, like True Romance, kind of. There's not blaxploitation in that movie, but
sure.
There's that element of somebody not making fun of that, but trying to embrace that with Gary Oldman's character who plays like the drug dealer who wants to be black but he's really white.
Yeah.
So it's just funny that all those aspects, and he's watching a blaxploitation movie in the background in True Romance.
I just think it's funny because it's one of those things where like something from Till Dusk Till Dawn, and I'm probably making this up, but it's one of those things where it's like a black guy in a black jacket who's a super crazy badass. He's got like a handlebar mustache.
Yeah.
He's got kind of like a mini fro going on. And then there's like a camera whip and then like a zoom in and he goes, damn. Like that's
that's super.
That's you're like, come on, bro. That's what you're taking it from. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I just think it's funny because that's the connection that you have to blaxploitation, right?
Right. And casting Pam Grier in that adds a little bit to that too, but makes it this is more of like an adult blaxploitation movie to a certain extent, to where it's not all manic killing this and that. It's more of like, oh, this is like the introspective look. It's like a traditional crime heist movie, but with a tinge of like blaxploitation. Which I also kind of think this is one of the more grounded heist movies we're ever gonna see. Like just the whole fact that the entire not heist, but like the entire caper or whatever takes place inside of a department store mall, really inside of a dressing room, and how all of that just happens. It's just really interesting to me. So
yeah, I mean, I feel like this movie definitely has a different kind of reality than Tarantino is usually known for. Mm-hmm. That's just my personal take on it. But yeah, I mean, I Pam Grier, for a reason, she's that famous for a reason. Obviously because of the movies she's in, but also because of her performance in this movie.
And her music career too. And salute to Tarantino for using a Pam Grier song in this movie.
There you go.
Yeah.
Have you seen Luke Cage season 2?
I have not.
Okay. I haven't either.
Oh, okay, no. Yeah.
I just wanted to hear your opinion on it, just because we were on the topic.
I'm done with the Marvel Netflix stuff. So.
Dang.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Dang. Did you see Defenders?
Yeah, I did see Defenders. Okay. That was when I called it quits.
I was okay with Defenders. I thought it was not bad.
Yeah,
But then again, you liked Luke Cage season 1, didn't you?
I liked Luke Cage season 1, yeah. Okay. But I don't know. To me, it's like everything's tainted now. You know what I mean? Like I don't even know if I can go back for Daredevil.
Oh man,
I don't even know about that, man.
Come on, man. You're breaking my heart, dude. You know
Jessica Jones. I love first season Jessica Jones.
I was gonna say, bro, I was like the biggest flag bearer of Jessica Jones season 1.
Yeah.
Like I was like, F you guys, Jessica Jones season 1's the best, and I would wave that flag like crazy. I still haven't seen season 2.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Because every time I'm like, Jessica Jones season 2 or Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
Right.
And I'm just, and I'm like 20 minutes of just ridiculous comedy or an hour of Jessica Jones
investigation fest. You know what I mean? Like,
but that's on me. That's on me. I fully take credit. I mean, punishment.
It really is. I mean, we have Iron Fist and Defenders like back to back. Is like, yo, like.
Speaking of Netflix, that's where I rewatched his next film, which is Kill Bill Volume 1.
Yeah.
Starring Uma Thurman, which he developed a relationship with in this movie, and obviously through Pulp Fiction. But I feel like it's definitely 100% on her carrying the whole film. But speaking of throwbacks, this movie is just a giant throwback.
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
To the point that it's hard to put your finger on the tone of this movie, because at moments you're like, oh, that's really messed up, and in other moments you're like, am I supposed to laugh or am I supposed to be horrified?
Right.
Because this movie does it quite a bit, specifically with music cues, specifically with different scenes.
Hyper violence in this movie.
The hyper violence in this movie, to the point that looks kind of fake.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is that the point, for it to look fake? And you obviously conclude that probably is the point, considering the I don't know what you call it, the sprinkler blood effect. The hose effect. When people get cut in the final battle of the Crazy 88, and they're just like shh, and it keeps going, and I'm like, I don't think that's how blood works as far as people being cut, but that's what happens in this movie. And obviously it's very much kind of a, I don't know if I should say love letter, rip off, tribute to like those things, kung fu films, Chinese kung fu films.
It takes a lot from that, and particularly with Bruce Lee's filmography.
I was gonna say, because I'm a massive Bruce Lee fan,
right?
So that's where I would go to as well.
Right, with the yellow jumpsuit taken straight from The Last Dragon, if I'm not mistaken.
Enter the Dragon?
Enter the Dragon, I'm sorry. Man, my text message is just...
I don't think it's Enter the Dragon. I think it's
the last film he did.
Game of Death.
Game of Death, there we go.
Yeah.
The one where he fights Kareem Abdul-Jabbar at the end.
Which is a great... I love that movie.
Yeah, he didn't even get to finish it, unfortunately, yeah. I hate the stuff that I don't know if you saw
added,
like, the stuff
where he's like in a motorcycle helmet.
Yeah. Which that's where Tarantino took the whole thing for the bride wearing the motorcycle helmet.
Yeah.
And also the bride, and it was kind of funny because that's the times that you see actress Zoe Bell playing the bride part. Who Zoe Bell ends up becoming an actress and frequent in Tarantino's movies. She's Uma Thurman's stunt woman, and a lot of times when she's wearing the helmet, that's
she's also in The Hateful Eight.
She's also in The Hateful Eight, yeah, and she's the main star of Death Proof. Yeah, she's one of the main stars of that. But it's just so but that he takes from that casting David Carradine as Bill, who David Carradine starred in that TV show that was created by Bruce Lee, but Bruce Lee didn't end up starring in it because like the American producers thought they needed an American to star in it, which also opens up a whole nerd conversation about cultural appropriation, which a lot of people say Kill Bill might be an example of that. I mean,
I was gonna say that's another thing. You're hitting so many different topics, but I guess we can jump right there. I mean, the fact that it is a white woman slicing Japanese people's heads off, and it's like the white woman
and Vivica Fox is
that's a good point. But it's one of those things where you're just like, it's the stereotypical. We need a crazy martial artist. Let's give her a Chinese and Japanese master, but let's make it a white woman. And obviously he points it out quite a bit, especially in Volume 2. But it's one of those things where it's like it's a bunch of Asian people losing to the powerful old white woman that took and dominated it. It kind of is cultural appropriation when it comes to that fact. But it's also one of those things that stems from, because I'm a martial arts guy,
right?
And I follow martial arts films and stuff like that. But there is this system that keeps running through different films of the white outsider learning martial arts from the Chinese or Japanese master, and he teaches him and he passes on the ways. Last Samurai is an example of that. But even characters like Snake Eyes from G.I. Joe. But even the character from the TV show too. It's one of those things where it's like, martial arts is really cool and people love ninjas, but it's got to be a white dude, otherwise they're not going to connect to it. And it's like, really? But that's really the case when it comes to a lot of martial arts films, is that characterization of the white guy learning the martial arts power, and he grew up in the village of whatever, and that kind of plays into Kill Bill quite a bit. Right.
And I mean, that's a big part of it. I mean, but I guess the plus side of it, which is coming from my personal experience, this movie actually ended up opening a whole window for me for martial arts karate films.
Okay, because that's something that my brother loved, and he kind of just like raised me on the Bruce Lee martial arts cinema, so I'm used to it. Right. But it opened the door for you.
Well, I remember watching, my grandmother, like I've mentioned before on the show, she loves karate movies, she loves Bruce Lee, Chucky Chan, like all these guys. But we used to watch Kill Bill a lot when I was little. Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2. She loved Volume 2. I'm not the biggest fan of Volume 2.
Okay, we'll talk about it.
But she raised me on a lot of those movies. So then once I got around to like rewatching the Bruce Lee stuff and all that stuff, I realized, this is where that came from. And I think Kill Bill really gave me an appreciation for it as being one of my first introductions to that. So I just think is really dope. Also, I just think I know we're talking a lot about the martial arts and the violence and the action, but Uma Thurman's performance in this movie is actually really incredible throughout this entire thing.
That's because Tarantino tortured her.
Yeah. I mean,
especially Volume 2 as well. Where it's like, you're pretending. No, she actually put him through shit. But you're right. Her performance is.
Well, I just think back to that scene.
In both films.
Yeah, I mean, when she wakes up from the coma and then she realized she lost her daughter and she's being raped by all these dudes. And just what you see in her face, just in that one sequence, just amazing to me. Also love the whole scene with the that music.
I was gonna say that song was also freaking some rapper took it too.
Rob Stone. Yeah,
the whistling part. It's like it's so catchy.
It's from an older movie called it's from an older Brian De Palma movie. I just can't remember which one is from. But yeah, Tarantino reappropriated that and took a sequence because it was also a split scene sequence, I think, with the original context of the movie that's from. He took that aspect and put that into this movie and just like completely recontextualized it, but made it
with awesome. Her name is Elle in the movie.
Yeah, Elle. Yeah,
Eye Patch Girl.
Yeah,
or California Mountain Snake.
Yeah, or is that Black Mamba? Or no,
Black Mamba
is the bride. Yeah.
I think it's California Mountain Snake.
It's California Mountain. Okay,
all right, I'm gonna look it up, but
I'll take your word for it. I don't know.
It doesn't say.
These characters are so confusing.
It doesn't say on IMDb.
But they're dope. Vivica Fox is super dope in this, though.
I was gonna say Vivica Fox is in this too.
Yeah,
that's a huge.
Yeah.
It's freaking Vivica Fox. You can't watch this movie without saying it's Vivica Fox.
Yeah.
Because it is.
She's hot and she like made amazing that. I mean, the whole opening sequence for this movie is like absolutely mind blowing. You know. But which we still need Kill Bill 3 because they said Kill Bill 3 is going to be about the little girl or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't want to see that.
I was going to say I don't want to see it either.
Oh, you don't want to see that?
Let's leave it at 2, man. Come on.
I don't know, man. I'm not the biggest fan of the second one, though.
Yeah, but one of those things, too, is obviously rewatching this movie because it's the most recent one I rewatched. When Vivica Fox misses, every time I'm like, bro, how can you miss? She's 5 feet in front of you. Like, it's got to be a really shitty aim to be like, poosh. It's literally when you're right here. I don't know. That's a small little tidbit for me. But that's another thing that we can talk about when it comes to this movie is tone. This movie is super over the top.
It's very comedic.
The way it's shot is with the super snap zooms that kung fu movies are known for.
Right.
The looking to camera and doing a crazy face and the camera zooms in on you. That's from kung fu films too. Or the freaking the other song that makes an appearance in this movie quite a bit is the one that everyone uses to like make a when you're realizing something that that song.
Yeah.
Every time I'm just like when I'm like laughing because it's
and that's another movie reference. I mean, like that's another thing that came from another movie, and also the Isaac Hayes that warm up song comes from an older Isaac Hayes film that he was a composer for. So it's just so chock full of like all these really funny music cues that take from a lot of different sources.
I mean, there's so many things in the movie that's from the. I mean, the fact that she's narrating, and every time we meet a new assassin, a new character, like she tells you who she is. Like this is Gogo. When we meet, is it Gogo or Gugu?
Gogo. Yeah.
And this is Gogo. Like, look, she is. She's 17 years old, but she's crazy. And like, look at her stab this guy. And then it cuts back to the film. Or when we meet, I forget her name, the French Japanese girl. Like she's narrating everything throughout the movie, and Tarantino also uses, funny enough, anime in this movie to tell the backstory of Oren Ishii, I think is her name.
Oren Ishii, yeah.
Who plays Cottonmouth. That's her name.
Yeah, Cottonmouth, yeah. And Lucy Liu's the real actress.
Played by Lucy Liu.
Yeah.
And it's funny how they talk about, in that meeting when she's meeting with the bosses, the Yakuza bosses, and they talk about, like, how did a Chinese, a Japanese, American become the leader of the Yakuza, right? And they talk about that quite a bit in this movie.
Right.
And the scene when the guy questions her because of that reason, and she cuts off his head. I don't know why I laugh every time. It's because the way he shoots her little feet running across the desk is kind of funny. Like I don't know if you rewatched this movie recently, but every time you see that scene and she starts going with her little socks off, and then just chops off his head. It's kind of funny in a way. But yeah, I mean, this whole movie is a giant throwback. Even the act structure is something that...
Right, exactly. But it's so cool, man. Like, I love the sequence when she's like going to the bathroom or whatever, and then the camera just kind of follows you throughout the entire thing, so you really get the scope of like the geography of the location. Yeah, location.
This movie, speaking of location, is another huge thing. Because that's, again, thinking of like producing shit. I'm like, man, that place does not look cheap. That place looked like it cost money to rent that place to shoot there. The final battle place is what I'm referring to,
right?
Because it's huge and it's got so much culture in it.
Yeah,
and I really do feel like when it comes to, obviously, Tarantino is known for his violence, his over-the-top violence, but it's also one of those things of the way this movie is shot. Those final battle scenes are insane, crazy, so freaking cool. Like, even without the violence, that movie can stand on its own as one of the greatest action scenes almost of all time.
Oh, without a doubt.
At least when it comes to fighting scenes, one of the greatest fight scenes of all time. And as someone who really enjoys watching different fight scenes, and it's actually something that, again, I grew up with. My brother kind of showed me different martial arts movies, and me kind of falling in love with different fight scenes. I'm very opinionated when it comes to quality of fight scenes. This movie holds up. Like, it really holds up. As far as her fighting the Crazy 88, even her fighting Go-Go was dope. Even though it's only like 3 minutes, but the way it's shot, it's crazy.
Yeah,
like
super suspenseful.
That's right.
Dutch angles,
the scope, and what making you feel like she's gonna be overcome by the quantity of people that she's facing off against, and the fact that the Crazy 88 show up after she barely beat Go-Go. You're like, bro, I mean, you barely beat her.
Yeah.
How are you going to beat the Crazy 88? And the general shows up and he goes, ah! And it zooms in on his face.
Yeah, and like all of the cameras like zoom out to show. To me, it was just so funny seeing that many people running out.
It is kind of funny. And then doing the jump. They do the Naruto run and the Naruto jump where they like have their hands behind their back and then jump.
Right.
It's goofy. It's like anime kind of, where anime, and obviously you're not as big of a fan of anime as I am, but anime is very over the top, and people forget that when they talk about anime. But I don't know if you've seen any anime.
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
there's how many close-ups in anime where a guy's going like, and then the music's playing like, it's crazy. It's over the top. Like, anime fights are insane. And this is kind of like an anime fight, which that's totally his intention, because the movie takes place in Japan. Like, for crying out loud, this is totally like him talking about anime and putting anime into
Eastern
films.
cinema and all that kind of stuff.
That's absolutely a part of this movie for sure. And obviously, I personally was like, man, I don't know. That backstory kind of makes me want Oren Ishii to win, right?
Anime backstory,
you kind of root for Lucy Liu for a hot minute. At least I do. I was like, man, Lucy Liu, I'm rooting for you, girl. But it's one of those another. Going back to movie crushes, Lucy Liu, man, that's another one. But it's one of those things where this whole movie plays with that over the top tone quite a bit. Even like making of the sword and all that. And
right.
It's so over the top. But I don't know, man. What do you think of this movie, and how do you feel like it defines Tarantino? Do you feel like it defines him as like, now he can prove that not only is he known for the crazy dialogue and all that stuff, which is in this movie quite a bit, but shooting enormous, insane action scenes?
No, I mean, I think he's always been a capable director, shooting all kinds of scenes. And I think this movie, I think both of these movies highlight how well he could do up close fighting, and how he uses editing at like just the right spots to like make sure the audience keeps up while at the same time being like generally entertained and like on the edge of their seats. I always think back to part one when the thing goes from color to black and white, you know, at the blink of the eye, just to kind of, I know they put it to black and white because they wanted to keep it at an R rating, because I guess it would have gotten like an NC-17 if that kept it in color. So then like that, I think they put it in black and white to like desensitize the violence a little bit. Not desensitize, but to, I guess, technically to sensitize the violence. Or sanitize at least. But yeah, so I mean, the fact that was a creative decision that they made in the blink of the eye to kind of switch that up and kind of put you back into that lane, back into the color to put you back into that scope. I don't know, just all around the decisions that are made throughout are really fascinating and interesting. And even the scenes where a lot of suspense is built, like we mentioned the hospital scene, but even the scene where she crawls back into the back of the truck and then has to do the whole wiggle her toes thing, you know, like all of that, like the way that the Oranishi story was stuck in between that. So like when you come back to that, it does feel like an entire long journey that you've been gone away from her. So like and in the context of the movie, that's how you're supposed to feel. So I like how he uses all these different elements of storytelling to give you characters' perspectives into what they're looking into these situations with.
And it's also, as someone who obviously loves martial arts film, it's also something that I always refer to when it comes to building fighting power. I don't know if there's a term for it necessarily, but it's something that I always take in mind when it comes to like who would win in a fight. Is it's so necessary to see that backstory, because then when we see a final battle, you have that anticipation of like, oh, Lucy Liu's dope. Like this is gonna be a crazy fight. Like how is she gonna be able to beat Lucy Liu? Whereas like I wouldn't have known that if Tarantino would have just said she's an assassin, she's really strong. But you showed me in that anime film that you did, and it showed me that it's like, oh, her fighting power is on this level, and then Uma Thurman's is on this level. They're almost equally matched. This is going to be a good fight. So the audience can be like, oh, now I'm involved in this fight, because I don't think it's going to just be a throwaway fight.
And that's what we talk about, the anticipation, right? He spends the entire movie building to that moment. So when it does come to that moment, it's going to have a nice, satisfying conclusion either way. So
yeah, and it's one of the most important things when it comes to martial arts movies is showing how strong the opponent is, so you can fear for your hero. You could be like, ooh, I don't know if he's going to be able to take this guy on. It's something that every martial arts film does.
Right.
Yeah. So
and maybe that's why part 2 didn't really hit me.
I was going to say, let's jump to volume 2. Why don't you like this movie, RB3?
No, I like it. I definitely like it. I just feel like this one's a little underwhelming when looking at part 1, to me at least.
Sure.
This one's less over the top, is more grounded, well, supposedly, but I almost kind of feel like it's more cartoony in a lot of ways too. Like I really do think back to those scenes where she's getting trained by the old wizard dude looking motherfucker, you know what I mean? Like
I was gonna talk about that, but you beat me to the punch.
Yeah,
you're right.
That to me just kills me out of like every time I watch this movie. Like, all right, I get it. Like I get the old Eastern Chinese film, throwback and all that stuff, but that to me is like, come on, yo, like you can do a little, like it's a little too much.
Oh my god. Yeah, I was gonna say that's probably the most over the top thing in both of those movies. The fact that he's like, you've come to train with me. Yeah. Forget you, and then it zooms in, and then it's like, choo. Like it's so over the top that I'm like, all right, this is definitely a 1960s, 1970s martial arts film. The way he shot it, the texture of the film. It's when you have those flashback scenes, you're right. The way he keeps stroking his giant beard. Right. I was okay with it because I kind of accepted the over-the-top tone, but apparently you hate everything, RB3.
Oh, no. I like no, and there's scenes like I love the scene where she has to like punch her way out of the grave.
Well, that's the other thing too, is like rewatching that, I was like, my God. Like, did Tarantino actually bury her? Because it feels that way. Like, it feels like Tarantino was like, no, you really got to get out of the box. I'm going to be up here waiting for you, girl. Like, because you feel her pain and her despair and her, like, this is crazy. Like, how do you get out of this thing? But it's also, personally watching it, it also plays into the whole, like, why don't they just kill her? They could have killed her like a long time ago. Why doesn't I forget what's his name is Buddy in the movie? Why doesn't he just take the shotgun and just blast her in the face when he shoots her with rocks out in the beginning of the movie? And then he's like, oh, I'm giving you a flashlight. And I'm like, why? Why don't you just kill her? Like, I don't know.
You're trying to torture him.
Like, man. I guess that you're right. The torture aspect was something that California Mountain Snake was talking about, where it's like, you're right, that's messed up. That's an evil way to kill her. But giving her a flashlight, to me, was like, really? If you really want to torture her, you would just bury her, and then that's how you killed her, by burying her like that. But giving her a flashlight, I was like, why? Are you That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Because you're literally telling her, escape and come back and kill me. I don't know. That's a little thing that took me out of it for a moment.
Right.
But, and again, there's some cool scenes in this movie. Like, I really do feel like the scenes with Buddy, even building the character himself.
Yeah, Macamason again, right? Macamason.
That's right.
Again,
and he's a bouncer for like a crappy club or something, a crappy strip club. And then when we meet a little bit more of Elle, we have her backstory as well.
Right. And I also think, I also think the fight between the mountain snake woman and I'm just calling One-Eyed from now.
Yeah, or you can call her Elle. Her name is Elle.
Or Elle, yeah, Elle, and the bride. I thought that was an amazing sequence together. As they're duking it out, and she pulls out her other eye. I'm like, damn, yo.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's messed up, right? That's so messed up. Like it's almost to the point that I'm like, we get it, Tarantino. You're messed up. You're really messed up. Like even the scene in Volume 1 that I didn't talk about, where he's like, what are you gonna do with her? It's like, I'm gonna rape this girl while she's. And I'm like, really, Tarantino? Like, who does that?
You gotta know who's the bad guys, man.
Yeah, I guess, but it's like you gotta make it like, I'm not just gonna kill your girlfriend in front of you. I'm gonna rape her and then cut her off her head and then feed her head to. I'm like, we get it, man. We get it. Right. Like, it's crazy. It's bad. It's messed up. But yeah, that's another thing. You're right. That fight was crazy. And it's also, I forgot to say in the first movie too, the over the topness where everyone's like, you have a Hanzo sword. And it's like, even at the end, that's her last line is like, she did have a Hanzo sword. And then she does. I'm like, what is this? It plays into the over the topness. But the thing that, in my opinion, when it comes to Volume 2, that will make or break people's opinion on this movie is the finale. When it comes to when she finally meets Bill and her daughter's waiting for her, and her daughter plays, cops and robbers or whatever the game is, and he shoots her with like truth serum and shit like that. I'm just like, bro, it's been over the top, but now it's like even getting weirder over the top. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think of that whole interaction, the conversation that she had with Bill?
It was a much more somber note to end the movie on.
Sure.
To me, I just always kind of felt like, damn, we went on this entire journey just to end it like this. There are some amazing scenes with David Carradine, though, like when he does the whole Superman speech and how Superman is really a secret identity for.
And I love Superman's like my favorite, so I totally.
Yeah. And I appreciate that stuff and appreciate some other moments in those, but overall, like damn, this movie takes place at the end with a house. I mean, of course, it makes it very personal for the bride and makes it the stakes very, very personal and narrow, specific for her. But to me, it was just like I wanted to see something else, at least at the end. But David Carradine does give a great performance as Bill, and he has a lot of fascinating things to say throughout that. So
even the flashback that we get with Lucy Kang, I think is who she's trying to kill. You know what I'm talking about? The girl with the shotgun.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I thought she was dope too, but it's just funny where it's like,
that was a crazy scene. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Fine. Have a good day.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Is the last line she says, and it's just like, really.
Yeah. I mean, there's that understanding between women.
It is. It is. You're right.
Yeah.
And I got that. I really did get it. I just thought it was kind of funny in a way, but at the same time, I guess the whole point is to show you that even when it comes to assassins, the humanizing factor of having a child, of being a mother, like no matter what, that's always going to be like, oh, you're pregnant. Oh, okay. Like even me who kills people for a living is not going to go that far. So I get it. But you would rank this one, Volume 2 specifically, lower on your list of Tarantino's?
Yeah, this would probably be one of the lower ones. But, I mean, it's tough because if you were to look at them as a Part 1 and Part 2 as one thing, Kill Bill as just one thing will probably be at like the 5 spot and the 6 spot of my Tarantino list. But Volume 1 alone is like number 4. You know what I mean? Like Volume 1 is really high. Just Volume 2 fell off a little bit for me, but I still appreciate what it has to say overall.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's I don't know. I don't know how I feel. I liked it because it's difficult to watch this movie in a different lens than the one I watched it with, which again is being a massive fan of the movies that he's referencing, which is the old throwback martial arts films. But at the same time, I get it. I get why it's not as high for you.
But I mean, we can't move on from Kill Bill Volume 2 without talking about the whole thing that came out with the stories.
I was gonna say, so my thing with Quentin Tarantino is especially now in Hollywood, because obviously even 5 years ago it'd be whatever, but now in Hollywood I feel like Hollywood is turning a page when it comes to how to make movies. For anyone who doesn't know, or anyone who hasn't been on a film set, I've been on a few film sets as a PA. It's insane. And directors are crazy.
Yeah.
And they scream and yell and do shit that probably shouldn't be allowed, but you're like, that's what the director wants. Kind of, that's the line that people say in order to excuse certain things that should not be excused.
Right.
And that's what Tarantino spit on Uma Thurman. Tarantino put her in dangerous positions.
Right.
Tarantino, like I said before, almost kind of tortured her throughout these movies to make her feel the kind of pain that she was feeling. And by torture, I don't mean necessarily physically, but psychologically, in a degrading kind of way, to the point that it's like, is she acting, or is she just getting the shit kicked out of her, psychologically by Tarantino?
Right.
Because that's what he does in order to get the performances that he wants.
Yeah, I mean, I know the whole thing specifically was with the car being driven at the beginning of part 2 and how that crashed. And I mean, we saw the video, it was all awful. But I mean, like, it's tough because when you look at all of the great directors throughout our time, particularly Hitchcock, particularly Kubrick, they all really have this thing about putting their actors under the microscope and really like putting the heat on them. You know what I mean? Particularly I think of Stanley Kubrick with Shelley Duvall when they were shooting The Shining, and how he did infinite amounts of takes and takes and takes and takes just to fuck with her. Literally just to fuck with her, just to put her to a point of a breaking point, so where that's just how she's always gonna feel throughout this entire movie.
Because of how she felt when she was on set.
Right.
Have you seen Barry?
I haven't. Was that the one with Ryan Reynolds?
No, Barry's the one with Bill Hader.
Oh, right. No, I haven't seen that. No.
It's the HBO show.
Okay.
It's literally, I won't spoil it for you, but it's in the pilot episode. It's literally about acting, and there's an acting school. But it's funny because there's a scene just like that, where afterwards everything is forgiven, because it's the acting coach is like degrading the shit out of her, and she's like, oh. And now perform, and she goes, ooh, and then she performs, and she's like, oh my god, thank you so much. And it's just like, everything's okay. It's okay to say these awful things because I get a great performance out of it. And then the actor is thanking the coach for degrading her, and it's always forgiving because that's the Hollywood way.
Right.
And it's kind of, they're making fun of it because it's a satire, but it's one of those things where it's like, that's kind of true, because afterwards you're like, oh my god, Stanley, thank you so much. Like, that's the kind of stuff you would say. Or Quentin, thank you for torturing me. At first I was very put off by it, but now, since you gave me such a great performance, I got out of it. All is forgiven. Everything's okay. Is it though? Is it RB3? Nah. Is there a line?
I think there's a line. I mean, Tarantino, I mean, it's tough. I mean, when you're actually putting like lives in danger, like you do with Thurman, like that's really scummy,
safety is like that's something you gotta have safety under control on your set.
Right.
Like that's something that the director should have under control.
Yeah. I don't know what the situation was that led to that. That was really that was super unfortunate that that's just the way that had to go down. But for a lot of, I feel like that's a lot of what Hollywood is, like manipulation, particularly directors manipulating actors to get them to feel a certain way. So it's tough, and I definitely don't want to see Tarantino start watering down his movies, but also at the same time, I don't want to see people being mistreated. But if we're going to talk about Tarantino, we got to talk about some of the other directors who literally fuck with their actors just to make, just to get the best out of them. And sometimes really effective, and sometimes people win Oscars off of it. So
yeah, since we're talking about controversy, let's move on to another controversy that Tarantino has faced before. And that, to me...
don't tell me the feet.
No, that's not. It's not the feet. You can have fetishes if you want. But it is the treatment of actresses and females on set, and the fact that he was so closely associated with Harvey Weinstein to the point that it's like, you can't, I'm sorry, you just can't convince me that he didn't know anything that was going on. Of course he knew. Like, if he was his buddies with Harvey. This comes back into what I was saying beforehand when it was saying that he comes from a different time, like a very different time in Hollywood. The behind the scenes of Full Tilt Boogie really showed me that. The documentary Full Tilt Boogie really showed me that, and the fact that he has the filmmaking process. For anyone who doesn't know, I highly recommend this documentary. But it shows you and this is he's not the director of this movie, but he did write it, and he's producing it as well, and he has a heavy hand inside the filmmaking of this movie. From Dusk Till Dawn is what I'm talking about. But the way, again, different time, because you've seen From Dusk Till Dawn, right? There's like dancers, like half naked dancers, naked dancers, and the way that they treat them on set is crazy. And again, a lot of criticism goes to George Clooney as well, because he's the same way, because he's George Clooney and he can do whatever he wants. Watching this film in retrospect, I was like, oh, this doesn't make George look good at all, because he's so like, everything is about like who you're gonna, it's a different time of Hollywood. It's much more like, oh, I can fuck whatever girl I want. He literally says that in this, Tarantino says that on set, and I'm like, you don't say those kind of things. You don't do that. But back in the day, it's like the extras in the movie, the guy extras, were all like harassing the shit out of girls. And then when it comes to even the PAs and the female PAs and the female assistants would get like, as if it was like a dead animal and a vulture, like they were just circling all the women on the set, and you don't necessarily see that so vividly, but I caught it. I was like, bro, leave her alone. There's like 15 dudes talking to like a girl and all like circling her. Oh, so what do you do? So who do you like? Who do you want? Who do you have sex with? Who do you want to? I'm like, you don't say those things to these women. They're just working on set. And to me, that's just another bigger picture of Tarantino, where he's known for being so loose to the point that it's like, is this okay? Like, I don't know if it is. And the fact that Harvey Weinstein's the perfect example of it. Harvey is the perfect example of the type of Hollywood that people were okay with.
Yeah.
The whole like, it's Harvey. Yeah, I know he's super flirty and super touchy, but it's Harvey. Like, is it okay, man? I don't know, man. I don't think it is, bro. I don't know. That's just me.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole tougher conversation of like, if you know your friend's a assaultant, like, what do you do in that case? I mean, that's a bigger conversation in and of itself. I mean, for Tarantino, I mean, that was his boss, you know, for lack of a better term. I mean, that was a dude who's bankrolling a lot of his movies. So I don't know if he necessarily confronted Weinstein about it, but I mean that's you know, I mean, fortunately now he kind of detached himself from, you know, the Weinstein. And of course, I mean, he said in a couple of interviews that he knew enough that he should have said something, but he just didn't. And that calls into a question of like, is ignorance and not doing anything just as bad as doing something yourself, you know? And I mean, that just depends on how you look at it. But I mean, at least he was honest, and at least he said, you know, how he felt, and he was being honest about it. And he probably had one of the more honest responses to the whole Me Too thing as compared to something like Ben Affleck, who's like, "Yeah, I told Weinstein not to do it," but then, like, you know, you fucking get caught up in his own shit too. So, of course, no shade to Ben Affleck. I love Ben Affleck, but
I was gonna say, I'll shade Ben Affleck.
You'll shade Ben Affleck.
Hell yeah.
I don't know. I mean, he did some things, but
I'll totally shade Ben Affleck.
And hey, man,
Go
but
ahead.
Ben Affleck has some great movies. So okay,
it doesn't mean he's an asshole.
No, I mean, yeah, of course. And you know, fortunately for Tarantino, it's not like he sexually assaulted anybody, you know, or at least that we know of. Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I'm not in for any Hollywood secrets, so I don't know any.
but again, I'm curious about you, because you come from a different generation necessarily now when it comes to filmmaking.
Yeah.
Going to film school, getting prepared for being on set and stuff, but I'm not that much more experienced than you are, but seeing the way people treat women, even watching behind the scenes stuff, you can tell.
Right.
Like back in the day, even with Ben Affleck, even with other actors, George Clooney's a perfect example. The way they treated women on set, whether it was actresses, whether it was dancers, whether it was background, whoever it was very much like the Ben Affleck tape that got released. Was like, well, "What's up, girl? You cute. Come here, girl. Come here," and start grabbing her and start like feeling up on her kind of thing. And so even if the girls are flattered because it's a famous actor, you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be so loose when it comes to, you know, women on set.
Right.
And just
but then with the Ben Affleck, I'm sorry we keep going back to Ben Affleck, but the one where he's like filling up on the chick, didn't the chick say like she was cool with it or something?
No, yeah, and again, that's one of those things where is it okay if someone's okay with it? I don't know. Is it? Because for me, it's like it's fine. It's a different time, but at the same time, it's like that's you. You're using your power, your dominance, your star quality, your position, your title, to get women.
And I mean that's right, and I mean that is a position of abuse of the position of power, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who are guilty of it.
Hollywood is filled with that. Yeah. That's where the Me Too movement came from.
Yeah,
because as someone who works in the industry and had that as a full-time job, and have seen people in power, and have seen people who are like, oh no, you can't say anything. This guy's like, he used to be friends with so and so, and he used to do this with so and so, and he made this and said that. So shh, you can't say. That's Hollywood, and especially with women, It's one of those things where it's like, yes, as someone who's seen it firsthand, yes, that's totally a thing.
Right. I mean, I just don't know how much of that like applies to Tarantino, like per se, like
sure.
In terms of like women coming out saying they're uncomfortable or felt, I mean, there's of course a lot of cases of people being assaulted or raped and not reporting it, and that's totally, given the way the system's set up. It's tough for a lot of people, for a lot of women to find confidence in doing that. But I mean, with Tarantino, at least we haven't gotten any accusations necessarily sexually. We just know that he's a dick and he didn't take Uma Thurman's safety into concern when he should have. But like at least we're not talking about somebody like Polanski or the worst of the worst. You know what I mean? Like Tarantino, he's kind of an asshole
even though he agreed with Polanski. Yeah, even though I was gonna say, bro, that's I was gonna say that footage. It's not footage. That tape, audio clip, kind of proves my point that I've been saying for the past 10 minutes. Is the fact that it's not necessarily having a physical hand in something. It's being okay. It's the attitude. It's Hollywood. It's like, oh, he just took some 17-year-old up to his room. It's like, oh, that's George, or that's so-and-so, or that's Jimmy, or that's whoever famous actor. No, that shouldn't be okay. That should not be okay. Like, it should totally have an attitude of clear lines that should not be thrown away because of the stardom or because of who you are, which is all what Hollywood is about. It's all ass-kissing to go to a different level. Like, that. Like, that's what Hollywood is. It shouldn't be okay. It's the attitude that is necessarily what my criticism of Tarantino is. That's what makes him, in my opinion, controversial. Is his attitude towards filmmaking on set and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Because you just proved my point with the Polanski.
Right.
I was like, oh, that doesn't make him look good.
I mean, we'll see how he handles the Polanski subject in his next movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, I'm very curious about that movie.
It does have a very Polanski-centric plot to it, so
we'll find out. And speaking of that kind of mentality, his next movie is Death Proof, which is the crazy stunt car action movie. For anyone who hasn't seen it,
with super badass chicks, which is as much as we talk about how
it's got freaking Rose McGowan in it.
Yeah, Rose McGowan.
But I was gonna say that's another one who probably hasn't been as supportive of Tarantino as Rose McGowan has been pretty vocal as far as her criticism on this whole thing.
Yeah. Well, I know she said she wasn't. Tarantino didn't speak up, but I mean, she Rose McGowan defended Robert Rodriguez for casting her and all of those parts back in the day too. But yeah, I mean, with Death Proof, it's definitely a movie about like the strong female centric stunt women who are surrounding this guy and like taking his and fighting. It's very much a Grindhouse style movie. That's what they're going for. It's part of the Grindhouse collection of that Rodriguez and Tarantino did together. It's originally a short. It was expanded out into a feature, and with featuring the cast that it features, and the very female centric kick-assery of it is consistent with like the Kill Bill mode that he was in during that time too, which is interesting. A lot of times with female action stars, there's the whole convention that they have to be sexually desirable or not just sexually desirable, but also be attracted to either men or women or have some sort of sexual desire in and of themselves. This movie does kind of play into that a heavy amount, because it's that throwback to the grindhouse aesthetic of like the 70s, 60s, 70s B movies, or you could probably call them C movies or grindhouse movies, you know what I mean? So it plays into that a lot. But I think it subverts a lot of those tropes too in the same kind of ways of the women biting back and the winning out towards the end. So I don't know. This, it's I don't know. This is definitely, to me, it's Tarantino's weakest. But I don't know if it's really like a film per se. It was originally just a short that was expanded into an expanded cut that makes it a feature. But yeah, I mean, that's what the movie is about.
Yeah, it is very much. Would you say it's his most grindhouse movie of?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and he takes a lot of influence from grindhouse throughout his entire career, but it is most clearly. I mean, it's part of the grindhouse experience. So
and that's what Rodriguez is known for too.
Right.
Is the fact that that's the type of movies he does. It's so funny because I watched that documentary, and it's so funny going through his filmography. Rodriguez's filmography, because all of them are basically grindhouse movies. Pretty much all of them.
Spy Kid.
Yeah.
Machete.
Yeah.
We got to do Robert Rodriguez episode for when was that Alita Battle Angel?
Yeah. I'm so curious about that movie.
Oh yeah.
I'm so curious about it because again, it's Robert Rodriguez. So I don't know what to expect. Is it going to be this crazy, ridiculous anime movie? Or I don't know. I'm curious how he's going to play with tone because it's Robert Rodriguez for crying out loud.
Right.
So yeah, I'm super curious about what's going to happen in that movie for sure. But yeah, this movie totally plays into that for sure. And it's one of those things that you can see even how the movie's shot is one of those things where it's like I can tell. I feel like that's even a thing in all his movies. The way it's shot can tell you the tone.
Right. No, absolutely. And this one's shot very grainy, very over top-ish. Again, very much in the ilk of those old school movies. So,
but this is also his connection with Kurt Russell, because Kurt Russell's in this movie.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, for the most part, I feel like, because I haven't rewatched this movie, but when I saw it, which was when I rewatched it, it's more like it's very much like a horror movie, in my opinion. But yeah, you're right. It is very much like, of all his movies, it's one of the most throwback.
Yeah, it's very schlocky in the sense that it's consistent with like.
But you know what's funny? Now that I think of it, connecting two things, the fact that this movie is about stunt drivers.
Right.
And we just talked about Uma Thurman. The fact that this movie is literally, I mean, that stunt, and this, the biggest one in the movie where she's like
car chase.
Yeah, when she's on top of the car and stuff, like crazy. The fact that someone can actually do that, and obviously we see that in another crazy action movie, which is Mad Max Fury Road. But the fact that you have people hanging out of cars and stuff, it's one of the most dangerous type of stunts to do, because you could say martial arts stunts or pyrotechnic stunts, but car stunts, you have to be on top of your shit in order to make sure everything is okay. Look what happened to freaking homeboy from Dylan O'Brien from freaking what's that movie called? Maze Runner.
Yeah.
Scorched Trials, whatever it's called. Dude, homie almost died because of that car scene that was in the trailer. For anyone who hasn't seen the movie, like that's some really, really delicate type of stunts. And at the end of the day, as much as you have a dope stunt coordinator, that's on the director. But I just think it's kind of ironic that.
Yeah, I mean, it's
just irony.
Well, it's a movie about a stuntman, right? Kurt Russell plays a stuntman. And it's surrounded by, like we said, Zoe Bell, who's this frequent stunt woman for Uma Thurman, has a very prominent part in this movie. So it's a movie about stunts and lives in this, stunts. So
yeah, and Zoe Bell's great. I like Zoe Bell. I think
she's amazing,
man. And yeah, she's almost like the lead in this movie, I would say. At least from what I remember.
Yeah, there's Rosario Dawson as well.
Yeah.
Too,
Oh yeah, Rosario Dawson.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Let's move on to Inglorious Basterds. Speaking of tone, this one's crazy.
This one juggles a lot.
Yeah, this one has some insane jumps in tone. But I do feel like, I believe Christoph Waltz won an Oscar for this. Correct me.
He did, yes.
This is the Christoph Waltz show right off the bat when it comes to the opening of this movie. And again, Tarantino plays with subject material. quite a bit, and the subject material is delicate subject material. I feel like he does that even more in his later films when it comes to Django, when it comes to Inglorious Basterds, of like, this is some dark times in human history that you're dealing with when it comes to obviously slavery, and with Inglorious Basterds when it comes to Nazis and Jews and internment camps and the Holocaust. Like, this is some delicate ass shit. And Tarantino kind of just threw the rule book out the door when it comes to this movie, because he's not afraid to tackle these subjects and to tackle these horrible atrocities that humanity faced when it comes to Hitler and when it comes to World War II, but also playing with tone when it comes to that kind of stuff too. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this movie, RB3?
I like this movie a whole lot, man. This is, you know, a lot of people consider this one of Tarantino's best.
Yeah.
I personally don't rank it that high.
Okay.
Because there's some parts of the movie that kind of move a little too slow for me. But not slow, but like just this is like a 3-hour movie. There's a lot to get through. And by the way, I feel like this is one of those movies where I could watch every single scene of it and love it, but for some reason the way it's all lined up together, it's a lot for me. So it's a little harder to rewatch this movie per se. But I know a lot of people consider this their best Tarantino film. It probably is.
Or favorite.
Or favorite, yeah. From a technical standpoint, I could definitely see why. I mean, there's the acting all across the board in this movie is insane. I mean, we talked about Christoph Waltz, but even Homegirl, who's the main, she's in everything. She's
Melanie Laurent.
Melanie, yes. She is nuts in this movie, and Brad Pitt playing the Kentucky sergeant. And like this, it gives.
But that's also with tone too, because he's so over the top in this movie.
Right. But it works, you know what I mean, and all of that. So I don't know. I just feel like it's a very over the top war film. It's almost, it kind of fits in the mode of Tarantino doing the revenge fantasies that he's been doing throughout his career, whether that's Kill Bill or Death Proof, and now this is also a revenge fantasy, and of course we're going to talk about Django also in that series. But yeah, just it does all that. And the chick and the other chick who's in Blue is the Warmest Color as well, who's also who's also another main female character. Is that the same girl who we mentioned before? Or? I don't know.
I think so, but I'm not sure.
She's Leah something.
Diane Kruger.
Okay. And maybe it was the chick we mentioned before. I don't know. But either way, the chick, I shouldn't say a chick, the woman that we mentioned before.
Diane Kruger. I think it was.
Diane Kruger. Yeah. So, but either way, yeah. All of these parts in this movie fulfill something very special and meaningful. I feel like through each individual storyline has a full arc that means a lot to a lot of these characters. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Ace?
To be honest, man, if I'm really being honest, this is one of my favorite Tarantino movies, if not my favorite. It's hard to pick a favorite, but this is probably my favorite.
All right, you go into it.
Because I remember watching this for the first time and thinking, man, this is dope. Like, I loved it first time watching it. Yeah, for me, this holds what I said before on the previous films. When it comes to tension, I don't think Tarantino does it any better than this movie. Like the way, well, obviously he does some great stuff in Django too, but the tension stuff in this movie is so crazy. Like, obviously the opening to me is like, that's tough to do, to build that kind of tension.
Amazing, yeah.
But even the scene, obviously the famous scene that a lot of people talk about is the scene where Michael Fassbender's character. Here you go, another thing. Michael Fassbender.
Yeah.
The greatness of Michael Fassbender coming to fruition in this film, even in his small 10-minute part. But that 10-minute part is like the best part of the movie, in my opinion. Is the
we're playing the King Kong, like the head game. Yeah.
And then the whole tension that builds between the shootout that eventually happens, and when he does the 3 beers, because I think Fassbender is like part German or something like that, and that's why he knows German so well. But that scene's amazing. The fact that Mike Myers is in this movie.
Yeah, Mike Myers comes in
for like a small little part. Yeah, and to me, Christoph Waltz steals this movie quite a bit when he plays, again, with tone when it comes to his interactions with different characters. And the fact that the scene where he's learning the names of of the different Italian names that Brad Pitt's crew has.
Yeah, right.
And he's like, Briano Borracini. And he's like, no, say it again. Borracini, huh? Briano Borracini. He's almost like taunting them.
Like he knows.
He knows. And he's like taunting them. They're always like, say it like this. Oh, that's very much more Italian. He's like, oh, thanks, man.
Yeah.
And he's like taunting them because he knows they're playing. Especially Brad Pitt with his huge accent.
Grazie.
To me, that's hysterical. I don't know, man. That to me is so funny to the point that it just makes me laugh every time I see that. And Brad Pitt's character makes me laugh every time I see his character. The introduction of Eli Roth's character is so insane and over the top.
Was it the bear Jew? The bear Jew? Yeah, I was going to say Jew bear.
It's another scene that to me is just very comedic to me. It's supposed to be very opposing. His character is, but at the same time, it's like, to me, it's funny.
Right.
And obviously the finale of the movie and the way that it's shot is so over the top.
Yeah.
The theater massacre is what I'm referring to.
Right.
With the close-ups on the characters that we've met previously. I don't know. I just love it. I think it's crazy. I think it's crazy how we can go from the ending of that insane thing that's happening to where we came previously with the scene in the the bar that's going on too. Is so funny to see the contrast between the two types of tones that Tarantino's playing with in this movie. And I guess that's why it's probably one of, if not my favorite Tarantino movie.
Right. No, I mean, there's definitely a lot of really cool sequences in this movie, really cool action, and a lot of really awesome moments, like when you get an introduction to the crew when you first meet them, like and when they're breaking out of jail or when they're being broken out of jail, and you'll still like dun dun dun, and then it cuts like individual title cards for each character or whatever. I think that's really fun and creative, and he does a lot. He plays with, like you say, he plays with a lot of different tones. I think that's what Tarantino's best at. I know he mentioned a lot of times he considers himself very influenced by hip hop, right? And the fact that he mixes and matches a lot of different genres and samples a lot of different movies and kind of puts it together and makes his own thing. When he does, and I think this is a prime example of that, where it is a revenge fantasy while also being a World War II movie, but also taking influence from American movies, Italian movies, foreign movies, with those old war documentaries that used to come out that were very prevalent at the time, and that's what they're kind of spoofing with the documentary towards the end. So all of that just in combination, just
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I forgot about the movie they were watching, the crazy sniper guy.
Yeah.
The German sniper dude. Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah, I don't know. I just really enjoy it. Hey, shout out to Sam Levine. Hey.
Yeah, that's right. Sam Levine is in this movie. Yeah,
that's your Schmodown connection right there.
What was who he was part of the crew.
He's part of the crew.
I can't remember exactly.
I don't know his name.
He had a good part in there though.
Hitchburg.
Yeah.
Shout out to Sam Levine, man.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good time. Yeah, I do love the country landscape that they capture a lot with the European.
Sure.
Since they do cover a lot of like the racism, the kind of blanket hatred that was happening,
and also the different, the funny. I mean, obviously the French play a huge part in this with the character. I forget her name in this movie, but the opinion of the French versus the opinion of, because in that time period, France was still known for its crazy art and stuff, and how the Nazis were kind of taking that culture away from France. It's gnarly what the Nazis were doing, and also Christoph Waltz's interpretation of the situation that's going on with his character, and how he can manipulate the situation to the point where he gets what he wants, or he's trying to get what he wants. To the super southern, Brad Pitt, to the, you know what I'm saying, like the German,
the black girl, and also the half black, or the black French dude who also projects the wheels. And also, isn't that it's interesting how it's another example of self-reflectiveness in Tarantino movies, that the movie theater literally has to be set on fire to kill Hitler. You know what I mean? We were seeing something that is so impossible and so unrealistic that we have to burn the movie theater down to get to that point, using actual old film. And it kind of transitions from the older tools of cinema into the new, and how, all that kind of stuff. So it has a lot to say.
It has a lot to say.
Yeah.
For sure. Let's move on to Django Unchained, which came out in 2012. Holy crap.
Yeah.
2012, man.
Yeah. I was a freshman in high school.
Oh my god. Damn it, RB3. I'm starting to like you, man. It's like the one thing that takes me off.
I was a sophomore actually when this came out.
Got it. Either way, that's too much, man. I think I was a sophomore in like college or something. Oof. No, I was like a junior in college. I'm so much older. It's crazy. Hey, man. But this movie stands out quite a bit as well, as far as even with tone as well, because that's what Tarantino does. And violence, quite a bit in this movie.
A lot of violence.
But specifically with what we were talking about before, when it comes to, putting on the gloves of, handle with care, and Tarantino takes off those gloves and throws around that box that says handle with care when it comes to slavery, when it comes to the South, and when it comes to the KKK, and when it comes to slave owners, like he just gives no shits. I don't know if you would agree with that when it comes to this movie, but when it comes to his, obviously I'm not saying it's a positive portrayal, but it's a portrayal nonetheless. Right. And the fact that it's coming from a white director versus the difference that we see from, like we talked about 12 Years a Slave with Steve McQueen. This isn't Steve McQueen. Right. This is Quentin Tarantino doing a revenge fantasy slave movie.
A spaghetti western.
Type movie. And the fact that this movie can have so many comedic moments, specifically the one that stands out to me that I can't deny how funny it is the Jonah Hill scene. Oh man, it's right. Isn't that nuts. Hysterical?
It's crazy how funny.
I can't see out these eye holes. And it's like, I'm sure she had great intentions and that she was really sweet, but I think we should all agree and just not use these masks. The fact that they're and it goes on for like 10 minutes.
It's like, who votes to ride out the bags? Me. It's like, wait, hold up, goddamn it, we're not going without these bags or something. Like, so funny, man.
And it's like, you know what, guys? I've had enough. That was my wife. She put in time and work. Like, the fact that it keeps going, man.
Man, fuck y'all. I just love that line, too. This movie has a lot of really sincerely funny moments.
But it also has horrifying moments. I forget her name.
Broomhilda.
No, the girl who plays Jimmy Foxx's Olivia. What's her name?
Which one? Oh, Kerry Washington?
Kerry Washington. Oh, my God. I can't believe I couldn't. Yeah. I was going to say freaking from that TV show, the ABC
Scandal.
TV show.
Yeah.
Scandal. Jesus. What's wrong with me? The Kerry Washington scene where she's getting, like, dragged and shit. I was like, this is dark. Like, it's very dark. And then Jamie Foxx's realization that that's, who has his wife kind of thing. Right. Or even Leonardo DiCaprio stuff is very dark. Yeah. Even though it pairs in with like the way it's shot with the snap zoom when you first meet him, when he's smoking, he turns around and the super zoom that goes in. Even that, it's like you're just like that snap zoom is very much like playing with tone as far as like this is so silly and over the top. Leonardo DiCaprio's character is, at least.
But then they have the Mandingo fighting happening at the same time, which is like a very
disturbing as frick, right? I mean, I that to me is like, oh my God, this is disgusting. It's just so many different things, but it's at the end of the day, it becomes one of those things where it's like a free black man getting his revenge on the people who did that to him, and that kind of thing.
Enslaved them,
And it plays in with that, even to the point that I kind of feel, this is me, don't take it the wrong way, but Christoph Waltz was kind of taking this movie for me personally in the beginning, but Jamie Foxx obviously comes into fruition a little bit later in the movie. But at first, Christoph Waltz, man, he's a baller in this movie. I think he won an Oscar for this too, right?
I think so, yeah.
I think he won Best Supporting Actor for this movie. And it's one of those things because he's a gangster in this movie. He's just dope. And he's showing Jamie Foxx's character the ways of a bounty hunter kind of thing. Even the fact when he first kills that sheriff, and when he's like, I have the paper, as if it's okay. Right. He still shot the guy in the middle of the street. Like, it's just, I don't know. I think he's great in this movie in the fact that he's helping out. Jamie Foxx's character is great. And obviously the KKK explosion too, like all that stuff is a lot of fun for me personally watching this movie. And the best line in any Tarantino movie, in my opinion, is in this movie too.
Which one's that?
I like the way you die, boy. I was like, oh, it's the most hype line in all. I think that's the line. I might be misquoting it, but I'm pretty sure that's it. And it's like, or it's like, I like to watch you die, boy. And I'm like, oh shit, that's the coolest.
I like the way you die, boy.
Yeah, that's the coolest. Don't you? I don't know if you agree with that.
Line. Yeah,
that's the dopest. That's like a mic drop right there, where it's just like, I love quoting that. I quote that all the time now.
Yeah.
So for me, I don't know. That's the biggest takeaway I have from this movie. But watching it for you, I don't know if you rewatched this one recently or at all.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this movie as far as like on a general scale?
Well, first off, I gotta say, I remember when Django came out. This was a movie that moved me so much. I saw it 4 times in theaters, potentially 5. Shit. I don't know. I can't remember if the 5th time is like a full watch or I left halfway through or whatever. But this movie literally, like, this was my obsession. Like when I was like in high school, you know what I mean? And I have it on Blu-ray. I watched it a bunch of times there. And overall, I mean, this is probably one of the most flavorful Tarantino movies.
You think it's your favorite?
Not one of my favorite. I mean, I probably still put Pulp Fiction as my number 1. This is probably my number 2, or if not, Reservoir Dogs might be number 2. And I mean, this and Reservoir Dogs kind of switch up every now and then.
Sure.
This is probably a much bigger movie with a much bigger scope, and has a very wide story and has a lot of story to tell. And has a lot of characters that we meet and interact with, a lot more than we have in Reservoir Dogs. So it's a lot more. I don't know if all of this movie hits as hard as to me that Reservoir Dogs, as Reservoir Dogs does. But this movie does highlight one of the key things I think that a lot of people overlook is the severity of the racism in the American South during that time. I know it's a very controversial thing when this movie came out and the N-word was being thrown around left and right. I think this holds the record for the most N-words in a major movie or whatever. But I mean, what do you want him to do? Like, not be accurate to the time period? Like, at that time, everybody was just throwing that around because they're using that word to keep black people down. But in this movie, it's kind of used, not used in that sense, but it's used as a word to keep putting these slaves down. But it's in the way that the African American community has reappropriated it as a term of our own and a term of endearment within our community. This movie kind of flips and becomes a movie about reclaiming what's yours, not just your wife, but your dignity, your honor, being stood in the face with the slave owners who are enslaving your people and taking that back from the evils that are implementing slavery. It's just all of that. Is very prominent in this movie, and I feel like that's the biggest theme that comes out of it. It's like reclaiming your freedom, reclaiming your dignity, reclaiming your honor through that. So.
Yeah, it's all about the contrast between submission and overcoming that submission, dominance almost, right? Because the submissionness of slavery to the point of the contrast with Jamie Foxx's character as now being the dominance, almost being the alpha. He's better than white people. He's bigger than white people. He's stronger than white people. He's smarter than white people. He's faster. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's not in slavery they were seen as less than, and now in this movie Jamie Foxx's character is more than. He's you know what I'm saying? Like, even the shootout, he's better than any white dude trying to shoot at him. It's reclaiming not just equality with white people, but dominance. Like, I'm the shit. I'm better than you, and I can do the shit that you can't even match type of stuff. I don't know if you would agree with that, but that to me is kind of what he's saying at the end of the movie as well.
Yeah, right. No, I think to
the point, like, even when he manipulates the Australian dudes, I don't know when Quentin Tarantino comes out in the movie.
Yeah.
Well, he has to put himself in the damn movie.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, a lot of people say it, but it's easily the worst part of the movie. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's funny though. It's super funny. It's funny. Just, man, you gotta that. I don't know. But yeah, no, you're right. And it is that whole thing of like, oh, the genetically black people are supposedly supposed to be superior but inferior mentally, and that's the thing that Leonardo DiCaprio's character Calvin Candy is like trying to illustrate with, like showing them the skull and busting it open and all that kind of stuff. He's trying to use this like pseudoscience, this like anti-black science that was racist science that was created back in the day to put people of color down, black people down,
to justify
Africans down, to justify slavery, and it's just interesting that in this movie we see Django, who isn't given the resources to read or write, but is taught these things. He's given the same opportunity that not Calvin Candy, but Christoph Waltz's character is helping him develop and build the tools to at least start putting him on an equal playing field with the white people. But he ends up just showing them out and killing all of them because that's just what needed to happen. But yeah, I don't know. It's just it's super fascinating how they use this fake science to justify the evils, and they also use religion in this movie as well too. We see that scene where the girl's getting whipped and the dude's like reading the Bible as he's like whipping her or whatever. But then that scene when Django comes in and whips the dude back, like that's just an awesome scene too. So yeah.
No, it's crazy, and the fact that even if he is a free man, that's questioned at every turn in the South, right? When he shows up on the plantation. And he says, "Why is he riding that horse?" And he's like, "No, he's a free man. He can do what he wants."
Right.
That's the response that Christoph Waltz has.
What's that one scene when they're like at the mansion and he's like, "Oh, how am I supposed to treat him, Daddy?" It's like, "Do I treat him like white folk?" No, son, I didn't say that. Don't treat him like white folk. Treat him like the boy who lives across the street. You know what I mean? Like some stupid shit. Like.
Or the fact that Christoph Waltz is like, "I have 5 reasons why," and he's like, "Well, come on in." Like the tone in his voice changes so much. Like those moments are really funny. I definitely agree with that. Yeah, I mean this movie has a lot to say, and obviously we didn't talk about the Samuel Jackson character yet, but the fact that we have that contrast between
a lot of people will consider Uncle Tom, right, the house slave as commonly referred to, person who's given special treatment by the master, made to think that master cares about me, master, all that kind of but and that's also the evil that has to be overcome too. It's not the evil of the white the white impressionists who are enslaving us, but it's also the impression that they leave on our people too. How we have to break out of that mind state of
that they love us, that we're family to them, even though we're slaves.
Yeah, where they're literally mistreating us and rape, all that kind of stuff. And
that's the thing that we learn really quickly in 12 Years a Slave too. The scene with Benedict Cumberbatch.
Right.
Where he's like, "Oh, he's a nice guy," but at the end of the day, he's like, "You're still less than me, and you're still a slave. So shut up." The scene with Chiwetel Ejiofor, he tells him to run.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So all of that just goes into enhancing the overall theme of blaxploitation, of it being the Western and all that kind of stuff. It just all lends to the central theme of black people having to overcome these kinds of.
And speaking of Westerns, he does another Western.
Hateful Eight.
That's the Hateful Eight. Mr. RB3. I believe you saw this one in theaters, correct?
Yes, I did. Saw it the 70 millimeter.
Where'd you see it?
ArcLight.
Me too.
Hey.
So this movie, which one? Which ArcLight?
Hollywood.
Okay, I saw it at the Sherman Oaks ArcLight.
Oh, Sherman Oaks. Okay. Did you show a 70 millimeter? Sorry to cut you off.
They did.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. They even gave you a little
booklet
and the souvenir. So this movie, I feel like that was almost part of the hype, in my opinion. The fact that it's like shot in 70 millimeter and it has an intermission in the middle of the movie, and you're like, damn, it's a 3-hour movie. I want to see this movie now.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was me going into the movie for sure. The fact that they were hyping the way it was presented and the way it was shot, which is 70 millimeter. That was a huge part of the movie, and obviously it plays really heavy-handedly when it comes to the way this movie is shot. Right? I don't know if you feel the same way as I do, but the way this movie is shot is very much like, all right, Tarantino's flexing. Obviously, his DP is, give credit to him, but it's one of those things where he's flexing on the way he shoots this movie, not just the story itself.
Right, and I can't remember the name, but it's Robert Richardson or Richard Robertson, one of those. Some.
I look it up right now.
Very recognizable name. He's won many Academy Awards, I think, but salute to him, because one of the things that heightens Tarantino's movie so much is the cinematography, the extensive backlight, the way the camera moves and how it's steady in some shots. And I mean, we gotta attribute that to a lot to what was his name?
Robert Richardson.
Robert Richardson. Okay, I was right. I said Richard Robertson. So, but Robert Richardson.
It was close enough.
Close enough, man. I was there. Fantastic DP who helped, particularly for the case of Hateful Eight, help reinvent or help readapt those old school 65 millimeter lenses. Not 65 millimeter, but those old school lenses, those Panavision ultra widescreen lenses. He helped bring that back into the fold for Hateful Eight and restore those and use those for modern cameras. So
yeah, you see a lot of that specifically with the opening of the movie. The first 15 minutes, you see, the crazy
wide shots and the landscape and all that stuff. Music by Ennio Morricone.
Oscar winning, right?
Yeah.
Okay, won the Oscar, I believe.
Yeah, won the Oscar for this movie.
That's another thing that stood out to me when I was watching this movie was the score. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like, I feel like I'm watching some event film or something.
Right, and I mean, Ennio Morricone is one of the best composers of all time. Did a lot of those Italian, the spaghetti westerns and a lot of Italian cinema as well. And and a lot of his music was used in Django, but he wasn't cool with that. And I remember like Ennio coming out like at one point, when Django was out and saying he didn't approve of how Tarantino used a lot of his music, but ultimately they came together and worked together on this movie, which is like a match made in heaven, in my opinion.
And it's funny too because this movie was almost not made because of the leak, right?
The script leak,
and Tarantino was very much upset about that to the point that he was like, I remember because he said he was like, I'm not even going to do it anymore because it's a script leaked. I'm so pissed that it leaked out, but he ended up doing it anyways, specifically because of the fascination that he had with Samuel L. Jackson's character. Almost, obviously, it's not connected to Django anymore, but it's still a free black man bounty hunter. That's what Django was too.
Ex-soldier in this one, context,
true. Yeah. But at the same time, it's one of those things where the time and race plays a huge hand in this movie when it comes to the Civil War, right?
Yeah, post-Civil War society, how people have to start looking at each other, the Confederates and the Yankees, and how they have to come together to some extent.
What's the old guy? What's his name? You know who I'm talking about.
Oh,
the guy who plays the Confederate, Confederate soldier.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. He's
a famous old guy.
He was in Nebraska.
Bruce Dern.
Bruce Dern, yeah.
Yeah, who plays a Confederate I believe he's a general.
Yeah.
And he even like talks about Robert.
Hyper racist,
super crazy Southern dude, and the whole fact that even the character of Walton Goggins, I feel like, is the biggest character in this movie besides Samuel L. Jackson's character because of where he's coming from. And how he starts out in this movie and this type of shit that he's saying. You're almost like, man, I can't wait for this guy to get shot, right? I don't know about you, but that's how I felt when I was watching Walton Goggins' character. Contrasting with, Kurt Russell. Jesus, I keep misnaming people. Contrast with Kurt Russell's character, who you feel and you think is going to be the main protagonist in the movie. I don't know. How do you feel about the characterizations in this movie? Because they're very much characterizations,
right? I mean, this is a movie that it's almost like a containment thriller, right? And that's what they're kind of going for. And I think this movie mixes a lot of tones of like Western plus comedy plus horror.
I was gonna say plus horror quite a bit.
Yeah. And I mean, it's very highly influenced by The Thing, right? Like, who's this one person who we can't trust in here, whereas The Thing is a sci-fi movie, but there's even parts of the score that were taken from that were unreleased from The Thing that were used in this movie. I was going to
say it's a horror score in a way. It really is, like, literally from The Thing, like you said, it's a horror score. So, and the fact that it comes from the composer of The Thing too is kind of funny.
Exactly. And that's what really works with this movie is the fact that it's so rooted in being contained and being all these people trapped in this environment, they can't get out,
and almost to the point of like, who is the killer kind of feel in the movie,
right?
One of us is. It doesn't. That's not necessarily the story, but that's how it feels the whole time.
Yeah. So all of that in combination with how kind of slow the movie reveals a lot of this information, and then once the information is revealed, it just happens like in a snap. So then like I know for me at least, when I watched it, when we watched it, it was the intermission came right after Channing Tatum shot Samuel Jackson, like in the.
I thought it came after Samuel Jackson's story, like right after his story.
You're right. It did.
And then he shoots.
It did. Oh yeah, and he shoots Bruce Dern. Yeah.
Bruce Dern.
You're right. That is where the intermission came in. But it's just fascinating how like that cutting point is where we have to question like what was really happening here, because like to that point in the story, we still don't know anything about Walton Goggins. We don't know anything about any of these other characters except for Samuel Jackson.
And not the fact that too, but the fact that we don't trust Walton Goggins when he says who he is, because I believe he says he's the new sheriff, right? And the fact that we're like, the audience is like, no, you're not. Yeah. Like you sound like an idiot. You're super stupid. Like you're not the new sheriff.
Right. And you can't trust Samuel Jackson either. That's because true. He has his letter from Lincoln, but he's also has this yellow stripe on his back, right? Like how he killed a bunch of people.
That's what I'm saying. It's all about information and proving things to other people, right? With a piece of paper or with a title. I'm the sheriff. See, this proves it, and this proves shit. Like it doesn't prove anything. Or I got this letter from this proves it, right? It's one of those things. Like it's like you don't. How easy or how not easy it is to get people to trust you or to get people not to trust you.
Yeah. I'm also like Michael Mann in this movie for having his character being like the silent guy who like creeps off in the corner. And Jennifer Jason Leigh too, we haven't spoken on her, but she's obviously
Didn't she get a nomination for this?
She did get nominated, for Best Actress in Leading Role. Deservingly so, because man, she really played a lot of different layers in this movie. She gets hit, kicked, punched. She uses the N-word excessively.
If it's a Tarantino film, she was actually kicked.
Oh God!
And actually punched.
I don't know about that, but
I'm just kidding. I just think it's funny to think of that.
Yeah.
Like, wow, this is really good acting. No, they actually did this on set. Whoa!
But did you hear the whole story about the whole guitar thing, right? Like how they broke.
Oh, I didn't hear that story.
Like that scene where Kurt Russell breaks the guitar. Apparently, that was a real like 17th century post-Civil War guitar that was like in this museum that borrowed from the movie. And then Kurt Russell got so into this because they were supposed to cut after she sung and then they were going to replace it with the fake guitar, but Kurt Russell got so into it he just smashed it. And like there's this big backlash by like the music community for like Tarantino like destroying a musical artifact, And then really, honestly, go back, watch that scene, and you look at Jennifer Jason Leigh's face. She literally stops acting. She's like, whoa. Like, so it's just funny,
That's hysterical.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I mean, obviously another thing that plays into this movie, besides titles and besides who people are, is time.
Yeah,
flashbacks of specifically Samuel Jackson's scene, and that's the first thing I took from that scene, which is crazy and insane. The Samuel Jackson story.
Right.
After the intermission, as soon as the intermission hit, I turned to my friend who was watching the movie with me, and I was like, "Was that all just a made-up story?"
Right.
That he did in order to shoot the general. Is that what you took from it?
I thought about that, but I just thought
I was like, this. He literally made that whole thing up just so he can shoot him because he knew he would get the rage to shoot him.
Yeah.
Self-defense.
I don't know, man. I just love the whole like skull fucking. He literally he said he had him bent over naked in the snow. Oh man, that's crazy, man.
That's messed up. I was like, this is.
I mean, nothing wrong with the act itself, but it's just like Tarantino, like
going
super
does.
hard on like disrespect.
What I just told you, I forgot like 20 minutes ago. I was like, no, it's he kills or rapes and blood, and he just meshes so many disturbing things to the point that I'm like, we get it.
Right. It's nuts, man.
Yeah, that's the Tarantino way, man. And the fact that it's like a 15-minute intermission too, to play
really lets you sit and think about it.
Because he do this as a play, right?
Yeah, it was. I don't know if it was conceived as a play, but it was performed live before.
Sure,
it
that's
was
what
a
I meant.
movie. Yeah.
Yeah, so that plays a huge hand for it too. But we were talking about time, that scene, and also the whole Channing Tatum side adventure scene too, where we get to see Channing Tatum act like crazy.
Right. I thought
his best performance by far.
Yeah, it is kind of his best.
I was gonna say it is kind of his best performance by far.
That and Magic Mike. If you haven't seen Magic
that
Mike.
and 22 Jump Street. If you guys haven't seen. I still said it the other day where I was like, best part 1 and part 2, Godfather 1 and 2, 21 and 22 Jump Street. People think I'm joking when I say that, but I mean that.
Hey, where are we putting the Magic Mike films at? That's where we gotta rank them. You know what I mean? 1 and 2.
I guess, but yeah, and Channing Tatum's best role ever. This movie's also really sadistic too, man. The fact that I don't know, isn't it? Yeah. Do you feel that way? I feel that way. I was like, man, this is kind of, especially the ending, right?
Yeah.
But the ending is supposed to say, look at Samuel L. Jackson's character, look at Walton Goggins' character, two people that will never work together in anything and will never trust each other. Yet for a moment, they do at the end of this movie. Realizing who Jennifer Jason Leigh actually is,
right,
and taking joy in torturing her in the horrible most way possible,
right,
and realize by hanging her, and it's one of those things where two people from different backgrounds can come together. I don't know, that to me was like the biggest point of the whole movie, and in a very obvious way. I don't know if that's what you took away from it.
Right, and they even get connected by the Lincoln letter, the lie at the end. That, you know, both of these characters, we don't know if he's the real sheriff, we don't know if that Lincoln letter, you know, Lincoln letter is obviously not real, but the lie and the conception of the lie is what's most important in mending that. So it's
almost the Atlanta episode where it's like the Confederate flag South people,
right.
But they're like, yo, that hip hop is dope, bro. Right. Or even the scene where it's like guns, bro. Yo, guns, the weird connection that you wouldn't think would ever occur occurs in Walton Goggins' character, who in my opinion like steals this movie. I think he's the best part of the movie in my opinion. Right. But speaking of performances, Samuel Jackson, a lot of people were like, oh, Samuel Jackson's great in this movie, and then for some reason got a little bit of backlash where Samuel Jackson's playing Samuel Jackson in this movie. I don't know about you, but do you think Oscar winning or Oscar performing Samuel Jackson, or he's still playing Samuel Jackson?
No, I mean, this is definitely one of Samuel Jackson's best performances.
I agree.
And is probably one of his biggest performances, honestly, like in terms of time, screen time, and the scope of emotions that he has to go through, because it has to be super sinister, super calming, super
funny.
Yeah, super funny, super witty. Also deliver the great monologues, but also get feel the violent pain of like getting shot in the nuts. You know what I mean? Which, by the way, a lot of people say screaming is not acting. That is, you know, to some extent, that's acting. You know what I mean?
It's physical acting.
Yeah,
that's what we talked about last week with The Revenant.
Because
you're feeling pain and you're still going to act.
Right. And, I mean, Samuel Jackson, I mean, just all around, he does the movie. I mean, overall, in this movie, he goes in a lot of places that a lot of Samuel Jackson performances go. And individual movies, he kind of puts them all together in this. So I definitely think it's one of his finer moments out.
Yeah, I also remember the fact that when he's talking to the people, when he's talking to them, and he's like, everyone knows that many don't serve no Mexicans. I'm Mexican and I was cracking up. But the way he says Mexicans,
he's like,
he says it with not an X but with an S. Yeah. It's like, everyone knows she don't like no Mexicans.
No, what did he say? He was like, she used to have a sign on the wall that said no dogs and no Mexicans. Guess why she took it down? She started allowing in dogs.
I laughed very hard. And the fact that what's-his-face is a walking stereotype, too. The Latino in this movie, I forget his name, the Mexican actor who's super famous in Mexico.
Damon something. Damon Bier or Blair?
I forget his name. Why is he not in the front? He's not in the...
He should be there somewhere. I don't know.
Is it
Mexican Bob, right? He plays Mexican Bob.
Is it this guy?
Nah, that's James Parks.
Where the hell is he?
We're leaving this all in, by the way, people, as we
Sorry, no, we're not. We're gonna cut it. Oh yeah.
Damien
You pronounce it.
I'm not even gonna try, man.
Damien Bekir. The fact that the whole movie, he's just like a walking. It's like, what do you think about that? Yes. Yes. He's like Guillermo from Jimmy Kimmel Live.
Right.
He just says yes. yes. Well, it's like Mexican accent. And he's like, see? Like the whole movie, he says that. And he still makes me laugh, but it's just funny.
Yeah.
That scene and in the scene where Jennifer Jason Leigh goes, Jesus Christ. He's like, oh, you Christian now. Quoting Jesus Christ. You can't say no Jesus Christ. Like when he starts, like when Samuel Jackson does that.
Yeah.
I started cracking up so hard. He's like, you found the Lord now. That was so funny to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. And this movie has a lot of funny moments, a lot of violent moments. But at the same time, it just, I don't know. I think it worked. It's very much a sadistic movie, but at the same time, it's in line with the Tarantino way. Where would you put this one? Would you put it more in the middle, towards the end?
More in the middle, yeah. Yeah, I mean, he has so many fantastic movies that doesn't put anything top, bottom, you know what I mean? And for a lot of people, you know, when we talk about something like Death Proof or, you know, for me, Kill Bill Volume 2, like, for, you know, those are his weaker movies, but for a lot of directors, those would be the best films in their filmography. So the fact that Tarantino has such a wide variety of films and they're all super excellent just goes to speak to how brilliant of a writer-director he is.
Yeah, and it's also, we didn't talk about as much in the dialogue in this movie, but obviously it's a Tarantino dialogue that we expect. And it's super crazy, witty, back and forth. It's really incredibly well done, and it holds the story together because, like you said, it's a containment film for the most part. Yeah. It's like all kind of in one location. So it has to be reliant on the acting.
Right.
And the dialogue that goes with that acting.
Right.
So, you know, props to Tarantino, and props to him for giving Walton Goggins his best performance, because Walton Goggins is a crazy good actor.
Yeah.
Like, he's super good. Let's finish up by talking about how Tarantino said he's only going to do 10 movies and then retire.
Yeah.
With this one's 8, right?
Yes.
This one's 8, I
yeah,
think?
technically. Because I think Kill Bill is supposed to be 1.
Or it could be 9. I don't know. But either way, Tarantino says he wants to do only those 10 films and then retire.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
He's not going to retire.
You think it's bullshit?
Nah. I don't know if it's bullshit, but he might do something else. Like, he might do TV.
Well, he said he kind of wants to get into playwrights and stuff.
Right. I mean, I could see that. I mean, I mean, this is a playwright here almost. Hateful Eight
to
some
yeah.
extent. Yeah, but I mean, that'd be interesting. I mean, you know, I same thing. Steven Soderbergh said he retired, and now he's back to making big movies again. I mean, I feel like with any artist, it's just not, you know, saying you're retired doesn't mean you're actually retired.
But his reasoning is kind of funny too, because he says his reasoning is the fact that after a while you start to not get as good anymore. You start, it's like it's the Brett Favre effect.
Right.
It's the fact that it's like I'm never gonna be as great as when I just drop the mic and retire and ride off into the sunset. Where people won't be like, oh, he got a little too
he was washed at the end.
Exactly. He got washed out. He's playing in the field where he was good at before, but now he's just trying too hard. Yeah. That's his whole reasoning for it.
Right. No, absolutely, and that's what it's all about. And I mean, salute to him for doing that. I mean, there's directors who tried to retire on a high note, but like their high note was really not a high note. So for, you know, I guess his last 2, I'm guessing, are Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and apparently new Star Trek.
I don't think he's directing that, is he?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think he commissioned a writer for it.
I'll wait for Paramount to confirm.
Hey, man. Hey, but if he directs, if he directs Star Trek movie, I'm seeing that shit midnight the night before. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's true. But then again, any Star Trek movie I'll probably watch right away.
I'm not a big Star Trek guy.
Me neither, but I'll still watch it.
Yeah.
Opening night. Anyways, guys, that was our conversation on Quentin Tarantino. It was a long one, obviously, but at the same time, he's a well-known director. So
yeah, we pushed through like 8 movies.
Yeah. Like that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Hopefully you guys leave us some comments, unlike last week. I'm just kidding. Either way, guys, let us know what you thought of this episode. Let us know what your favorite Tarantino movie is. Let us know what your least favorite Tarantino movie is. Let us know what you think of him as a person, as a personality in Hollywood. What did you think of the conversation? Comment section down below. That's what it's for. Either way, guys, for the Meaning of Podcast, I'm Ace.
This is RB3.
And we are peacing out, guys. Peace out.